And as I think about the Cardinals heading into 2024, one of the big questions for them, who the hell is going to play center field? What's wrong? What are you laughing about, bud?
I've got a question myself.
Everyone should head over to our
By the way,
studio
with
cams.
Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN.
Everyone should head on over to our studio cams, which is presented by the Air Alliance team, YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL, because somebody's a big baby in the studio.
Yeah, listen, today I have to eat baby food. I've got my squash.
Oh, yum. Oh, here, let's go to just your camp.
I've got my peas.
Oh God, the
that
peas are going to be so
disgusting.
bad.
I've got my sweet potato and turkey.
Ooh,
And the coup de grace, really, apple chicken.
Oh my God,
That looks nasty.
I would go sweet potato turkey before I would do apples.
So I'm starting with the squash today. By the way, if you guys want to watch this, we'll do it at the end of every hour.
By the way, you bought a ton of this.
Oh, this is the only thing they had.
Well, I'm saying, like, you bought a ton for somebody who whined yesterday about I'm not finishing them.
I didn't have a choice.
He probably bought a lot. He probably bought this much in case he likes it. It might be his lunch.
I am going to give some of these to you for your little ones, Alex. You can have the ones that I'm not
Kids
using.
don't eat that crap. My kids eat real food.
That's fair.
Give it to T-Bone and be good for his road trips.
So yeah, that's the way I'm spending
looks
my
good
day
on you,
today.
man.
Thanks, buddy. I've got my.
It accentuates the apple.
Yeah.
Not the chicken and apple.
Man,
I'm talking about the other apple.
If I knew this punishment was going to fall on Halloween, we should have just made him dress up as a giant baby.
All you need to do is take his shirt off and look like one. Just a man baby.
Wear a big diaper.
Yeah, wear a big diaper.
That would have been a great
Just a
punishment.
man baby. Look, I've seen you in your Snow White lingerie. I can take
Yeah.
a man baby costume.
People that haven't listened to the show before maybe hear that comment and they take it in places that it's not meant to go, but I'm just going to leave it sit.
Well, I saw it at work.
Let it sit.
I saw it at work. That's all
Use
you
your
need to know about this.
imagination out there.
You don't need to. I can show you the picture.
So anyways, Cardinal center fielder, we don't know who it's going to be. I think eventually it's going to be Victor Scott. But on opening day, I genuinely don't know who's going to get the first crack at it. I would give my nomination to Tommy Edman. And Alex, the reason why is because as I'm watching Alek Thomas out there in this World Series, I think to myself, I think that's basically a less potent hitting version of Tommy Edman. Because Alek Thomas, like you look at the numbers, man, he is not a good hitter. I think eventually he can be. He was a top 20 prospect in the sport. He is basically in center field what Mason Wynn is for you at shortstop, where anything he gives you offensively is a plus. He's a lefty bat, great speed, helps you on the bases. Like he does everything other than hit, which kind of sounds like Tommy Edman to me, who does everything other than hit against right-handed pitching specifically. And as you go into next season, you think about the way this lineup could be constructed. Man, I've got Lars Nootbaar at the top. I've got left-handed hitting players throughout with potentially Alec Burleson coming back, Donovan back, Gorman there. You've got the stars with Contreras and Goldie and Arenado. I think you've got enough, and by the way, Jordan Walker, who I haven't even mentioned, I think you've got enough hitters in this lineup to where you can have an up-the-middle position that is more focused primarily on defense, and I think that should probably be Tommy Edman.
Yeah, until you make the trade. If you make the trade. And what I mean by that is Donovan or Gorman, if you're trading one of those guys, and then you start to get more into the category of, okay, well, now we might have two people in this lineup that can't hit to the ability that we need them to. But if I'm going to get gold glove defense in center field, I'm fine with it. I mean, we suffered through Harrison Bader for long enough to where
Whoa. Suffered?
Yeah.
Gonna
was
disagree with
great
that. I think he was fine.
No, we suffered a very long time with Harrison Bader.
It was bad when he was hitting like fifth.
Well, it was also
Obviously
bad when he
not
was hitting
ideal.
like 100, but we suffered through it.
That never happened.
Oh, it happened. It happened. You just don't remember it because you were still in La La Land looking at him like, oh, Harrison, I love the flow. Oh, Harrison, I love the
By the
gold
way, he's a
glove
free
defense.
agent. Could technically be an option for you next
Look,
year.
I'm fine with it as long as your offense can pick up the slack for it. And as long as Tommy Edman can provide you that gold glove defense all season. And that's the one thing we didn't see. Yeah, we did see it for that short sample size, but does it last? Can he stay healthy for you? Can he continue to make those big plays for you in the outfield? Here's why I lean towards Tommy Edman, because I don't think there's anything else out there that you can reasonably acquire. Harrison Bader, I saw the projections. I don't know if I want to ride that rodeo once more.
I'm ready to buck that
Of
bull.
course you are. Of course you are. BK is absolutely ready to
I'm
buck
not.
that
I
bull.
would rather have Tommy Edman next year in center field.
There's you try and make a trade, you're going to give up more than I think you're going to get in terms of just receiving a defensive-minded center field. So yeah, give Tommy Edman his flowers, give him a season, and let's see what it can look like. Because against left-handed hitters, you know what you have, and against righties, at least I get that Gold Glove defense. I'm doing the same with Mason Wynn, but I also can't be trading all these big-time bats in the offseason.
Yeah, I think Edman is the guy that you go with in center field to start the year. I think center field is more of a want for the St. Louis Cardinals going into free agency, going into this offseason. Like, if they find somebody else that they can trade for or sign like a Bader, I think it comes down to, oh, hey, we actually have $10 more million than we were expecting, so let's go out and get somebody that can play center field. But otherwise, I think you'll be fine with Tommy Edman in center because you saw the ability to run down balls in the outfield. And I think that is going to be, though I question the arm, him being able to cut down some of those balls that should be doubles, like the catch Thomas made last night, that's a catch Tommy Edman makes. And with a guy in right field and Jordan Walker, whose route running ability will see where it's at going into next year, you want somebody with speed that can close down and help cover some of that gap in right center. And that's what Tommy Edman can do. As much as people want Dylan Carlson to be the center fielder, he doesn't have the speed to where if he's off by just a millisecond on his first step, or he takes the wrong step off the bat, he can't close down that mistake like Tommy Edman can. And Tommy Edman can get to a lot of baseballs, so I think he is the center fielder. He's the stopgap guy, and that's all they need. They need a stopgap guy for whether it be half a season or just one full season until Victor Scott is ready to go.
That is if we believe Victor Scott is going to translate at the majors. Like, we don't even know if that's going to translate to the majors.
Absolutely, and that's why, like, I don't think you could just go into the season next year saying to yourself, oh, let's write it off, we'll eventually have Victor Scott. No, you need a starting center fielder. And if Victor Scott progresses the way that we all hope and believe that he can and will, then great. By the end of the year, you've got a tough decision to make of who should start every day. Hopefully Victor Scott plays so well that he forces your hand the way that Mason Wynn did at the end of last season. That's great. That's one of the good problems that you have. But last year, about midway through the season, as Tommy Edman was starting to get some extended run in center field, T-Bone, you and I went to Busch Stadium and we asked Ollie Marmol, hey, when you think about what you're looking for in a center fielder and what Tommy Edman brings to the position, how does he fit into that spot? Here's what Ollie Marmol said to us at the time.
When you look at profiling a center fielder, there's a couple of things you're wanting. You wanted him to have good instincts to read the game right, read swings, but also have a combination of that first step and closing speed, and he's got that. He just outruns the baseball, and when you're able to do that, you position yourself well, you have a good first step, you have a good route, like that equates to being a really good center fielder.
I think that's what he is. You look at it last year numerically, the eye test, whatever it is that you want to look at, he passed every test with flying colors when he was in center field. In fact, I think he was better in center defensively than he was at shortstop or at second. And I know that sounds like high praise because he was a Gold Glover basically at second base. I think he was that good, man. I really do. I think he translated well. I think the arm didn't show up as much of a liability as I expected it to. Would you like it to be better? Of course you would. Of course. But guess what? Alek Thomas had one of the weakest throwing arms in the majors this year, and he was a borderline Gold Glover out there in center field as well. The other thing, Alex, people are talking about on the text line at 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Guys, I think if you go with Tommy Edman, this one comes from the 314, you would be settling in center field. Why don't you actually go out there and get a real center fielder? I think Tommy Edman, the only reason we don't view him that way is because he's played other positions. If he had never played another position, and Alex, you had no history of Tommy Edman as a player, if he had signed here last year as a free agent, or they had picked him up the way that they did with Richie Palacios, and then he goes out there and the first thing you see is him playing in center field, you'd say, I bet you that guy's an everyday center fielder for a team. That's what our reaction would have been. But we don't view him that way because our previous history with Edman was him playing on the infield, and he doesn't have a history of playing in the outfield, really. So I think he can be that guy for you. And as you look at the Diamondbacks, they were a top half of the league in defensive runs saved and outs above average in center field. The Phillies were top 5 in both categories. The Rangers top 10 in both categories. The Astros top 5 in both categories. The teams that were still playing deep into the postseason, all of them put a premium on defense in center field. If you're the Cardinals going into this offseason and you're thinking about, okay, we've got our rotation that has to get fixed. Our bullpen has to get fortified. Let's not forget about what we need to do position player-wise as well. Let's make sure that's set with roles in place where guys are going to play mostly every day. What does our starting 9 look like on a consistent basis? For me, that starting 9 should include Tommy Edman, and it should include him playing in center field.
Yeah, the people that look at it as you're settling with Tommy Edman, I mean, Tommy Edman is a better bat, at least from their careers, than what Alek Thomas is. I mean, Tommy Edman has a better average. He's got a better on-base percentage. Now, you're looking at more split-heavy with something like that, but I think the same can be said for Alek Thomas. The real question is, he's not the everyday center fielder has been, but like you mentioned, it's because we've seen him as the second baseman. It's because we've seen him as a shortstop. And I specifically remember Cardinals fans screaming that they wanted a Chris Taylor the time he was dominating with the Dodgers because he could do everything. Well, I mean, that really is Tommy Edman. And somebody said, put Brendan Donovan in center field. He can do that. I would much rather have Tommy Edman in center field, who I saw, what was it, like 300
not
innings?
A center fielder, guys. Come on, that's ridiculous.
Not even really an outfielder.
He had 300 innings this past season in center field, and he was very good in it for you. I'm concerned because the arm makes me a little skeptical, but hey, I mean, Tommy Edman proved that he can handle it at least better than anybody else on this roster, so that's not settling. To me, going out and re-signing a guy that you had here for 8 years in Harrison Bader, or bringing in somebody who is just the defensive-minded center fielder, that would be settling.
So we have a few other texts that are kind of to that degree, Alex, of guys, here are the other options that the Cardinals could go with in center field because Tommy Edman's clearly not the guy. One of those is Harrison Bader. Another is Kevin Kiermaier, both of whom are free agents this offseason. I like Kevin Kiermaier. You guys know I've talked about in the past, hey, if you don't have a true center fielder, that's the guy that I would look to potentially acquire either via free agency or previously via trade. Well, Kevin Kiermaier, while excellent defensively, has always been a below-average bat. For his career, he's about 2% below league average offensively. He's got a .718 OPS in his career. You guys know where Tommy Edman's at in his career? OPS-wise, about 8 points better. OPS plus-wise, about 2% better. Tommy Edman's a slightly better hitter in his career than Kevin Kiermaier is. By the way, fewer injuries, 5 years younger. Harrison Bader, a year older, more injuries, and a below-average bat. About 8% worse offensively, and if you want to go by OPS, you don't like the nerdy advanced numbers, about 20 points worse on OPS. So I've got a better hitter. I've got a capable defender that, I mean, might project this season to be similar, if not as good, as Bader and Kiermaier, and a guy that has proven to be healthier more often than either of those two guys. Harrison Bader played in less than 100 games each of the last 2 seasons. The last time he played in more than 105 games was 2019. Kevin Kiermaier played in 129 games this year, but previously 60, 80, 90. He's a guy that doesn't stay on the field very often. You look at Tommy Edman, the back of his baseball card, each of the last 3 seasons, 130-plus games. That's the guy that I'm moving on from? Not for one of those two players.
Yeah, no, I think if you had a unlimited budget, I still think you would explore one of those guys. But without that, I don't think it's settling on Tommy Edman because I think he is a capable bat and he is good enough defensively out there in center field. And I think for him, I think it's just all about that closing speed and the ability to get to the ball when it's in the air, because that was their biggest issue last year was defense in the outfield. And why? Because balls were falling so often when they were hitting to the gaps. And
they were becoming extra bases.
Yeah, they weren't being held to either outs or singles. They were getting down and they were becoming doubles. And that's what really killed this team. So I don't think you're settling. And I think for people that say, well, then you're playing a guy out of position. No, his position, though it will be listed on any site that you see as second base or he came up as a second baseman, his position is utility.
Yep.
And utility means he can play every position but catcher and pitcher.
And he's different than Donovan in that regard, in that he's good at all of those positions. Yeah. Brendan Donovan is passable.
Brendan Donovan just won a gold glove at those positions.
You guys know I'm the biggest Brendan Donovan fan that you will find.
Starting to question it.
He's passable defensively, basically wherever you put him, at second, third, left, right. He's fine at any of those positions. You can play him at first if you need to in a pinch. He is not above average necessarily at any of them. I think Gorman at this point is a better second baseman defensively than Brendan Donovan. He's certainly not better than either of the two guys that you have on the corners, either in the infield or in the outfield right now. So maybe you could argue Jordan Walker. I think Walker next year will compare him to Brendan Donovan and say Walker's a better defender in right field than Brendan Donovan is.
You know what the problem is, T-Bone? I think baby's tum-tum's upset.
Oh, you think he's hungry?
I think baby's tum-tum needs some yum-yums.
We'll get to that at the end of the hour. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. By the way, yesterday we got news that Game 1 of the World Series was the least watched World Series Game 1 in the history of the World Series. That actually surprised me. I thought there would have been one, maybe somewhere, that was a lower-rated game. Not a single one of them.
This is why Rob Manfred's in his office going, son of a, we need changes to baseball.
Yeah, 9.3 million viewers was the total. In 2020, during the COVID season, game one between the Dodgers and the Rays got 9.5 million viewers. So 200,000 more viewers for that one than this one. For what it's worth, postseason ratings are up overall compared to last year's, but this World Series is certainly not going to help in that regard. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're diving into some NFL quick hitters. There has already been one significant trade in the NFL earlier today. We'll get into that, our takeaways from it coming up at 11:30. Plus, are we going to see another trade of significance from a team that we watched last night? We'll get into all of that coming up at 11:30. But next, is this a roster construction issue for the Blues? And Alex, if they don't start scoring more goals, what can we learn about this team after the 10-game stretch? We'll talk about that all coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Do I like the way this is happening? No. Is it the roster construction? No, I don't believe so. I think your roster can be competitive with most of the teams in the league, because otherwise, how do you explain beating the Penguins here like you did? How do you explain beating the Flames? It's going to be up and down for a while here until they figure out, one, how to use this system properly, how to turn offense out of this system. They haven't figured that out yet. That's going to take some time.
This is maybe a roster construction issue, but according to Jamie Rivers, who was on the Fast Lane yesterday talking about this with Anthony Stalter, not so sure yet. We're not there just yet. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 10 minutes or so, we'll get into some NFL quick hitters, including the latest news as today is the trade deadline in the NFL. Alex, Jamie says, not so sure about this just yet, about being a roster construction issue. Otherwise, how do you explain the wins against Pittsburgh and Calgary? In your mind, do you view the Blues start to the season as a potential roster construction issue?
I do, actually. When I look at the when I look at the Pittsburgh Penguins game and the Calgary Flames game, those are clear-cut two of the best games that the Blues have played this season. Those two games, I think, and this just might be my opinion, I think you beat a team that are in worse roster construction situations. Calgary, for example, Calgary is the prototypical St. Louis Blues from the 2022-2023 season. They've got their top players who are pending UFAs that don't know if they want to be here. They don't have really an identity of how they're trying to play. Their top players aren't performing. Their goaltending hasn't been any good. They're you from last year. It's like Back to the Future. And then with the Pittsburgh Penguins, I mean, look, on paper, Pittsburgh looks like they should be a dominant powerhouse. But Pittsburgh right now is in a situation where it really feels like, and we did this in the office, it feels like the San Jose Sharks, where you're trying to throw all of these veterans into a lineup and say, hey, go win us hockey games, where in reality, you're really just relying on Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, and you've got some guys that are a little bit older, you got you lack speed on that team, and that's why the Blues looked good against those teams, because they were faster. They were a better constructed roster because they were on the same page. I think when you look at Vancouver, when you look at Winnipeg, when you look at Arizona, the three losses that were their worst losses, those are three teams that are on the same page exactly with what they're trying to accomplish. They know their identity. The roster's been in place for, 3 years now for most of these teams. They know what they're trying to accomplish. So when I look at the Blues, the one thing that's starting to make me more and more concerned is you're just lacking this chemistry right now. You're lacking this flow, this consistency on the ice together. Like defensively, you're finding ways to keep things to a minimum, although that Vancouver game showed you differently. Your goaltending has been outstanding, but you're not generating any offense. And these guys, these top six players, with the exception of Kapanen and Verana, the other five have been on this team for the last 3 years, and you just don't have that flow with your line combinations.
So Calgary's 1-6-1 in their last 8 games. The Penguins are 2-6-0 when they don't play Calgary so far this year. That is a combined 3-12-1. Those are bad hockey teams, man. And that's where 2 of your 3 wins have come so far this year. Now, to be fair, those are the teams on your schedule. And if those are the teams that you're going up against, I will give you credit when you play well, as we did on Friday. We gave the Blues the credit that they deserved, I believe, for beating the Calgary Flames.
Absolutely.
Not only did they beat Calgary, they kicked their ass. They played really well last Thursday night, but it was followed up by an embarrassing performance on Friday where they showed up and forgot that the hockey game was starting. By the time that they got through that first period, I think everybody looked around like, oh boy, we really got to raise our game a little bit. And then they get into the second period and it's even worse. Then it starts to really have that snowball effect. So the Blues so far this year, man, it is not hard to diagnose what's gone wrong. They can't score. They're scoring 1.8 goals per game so far this year through their first 7 games. The only team that has been worse is whatever the hell they've got going on right now in San Jose. That is an abomination to the sport of hockey. They are horrific, and they knew they were going to be really bad coming into the season. Blues are in a retool, they believe. The San Jose Sharks in a full-blown teardown mode. They are trying to get the number 1 pick actively, so that way 5 years from now they can be good. They are now where Arizona has been for the previous few seasons. So they don't even really count in this regard. If not for San Jose, you'd be last in the NHL in goals. Well, I see the issue. You kind of got to score goals to win, typically. Alex, I looked this up before the show today because I was curious, because the Blues right now are on pace to score fewer than 20 goals in their first 10 games of the season. So less than 2 goals per game, first 10 games. You're through 7 games right now. If that ended up being the case through 10 games, they would join the likes of the 2022 Montreal Canadiens, 2022 Arizona Coyotes, and I believe it's 6 other teams since 2016. So in the last 7 seasons, there are 6 other teams that have scored 20 or fewer goals in their first 10 games of the season. Out of all of these teams, 1 did not select in the top 10. That team selected 11th. It was the 2017 Kings.
That'd be an improvement in our eyes.
That would be improvement.
None of these teams made the playoffs. None of these teams even really got all that close to the postseason. The best season was that 2017 Kings team. They had 86 points on the year. Every other team had 71 or fewer. In fact, the Kings show up on this list twice. I don't think that is a coincidence, considering the fact that that is the team that Doug Armstrong has compared this retool to. So, Alex, when you hear all of that, the Blues' lack of scoring, the teams that are going through this, where they ended up, what does it tell you?
It tells me that this team is still right now in between. It tells me this team is still trying to figure out who they are, and this kind of goes into why I personally feel like they might have a roster construction problem, because you're lacking goal scoring. Well, you built this team, this new era of Blues hockey, underneath the umbrella of Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas. Now, it's not all on them. I mean, obviously 2 guys can't win hockey games for you, but those 2 guys have combined for 2 goals right now, and they're split up together, where you constructed this thinking that those are going to be your top lines. Look at what Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz are doing right now. Like, that is a 1-2 punch that Arizona can't break up. You don't have that right now with Kyrou and Thomas. Pavel Buchnevich, although, again, he was hurt in the first couple of games. It took a little bit of ability to get underneath his feet. You haven't seen the game breaker that we thought of. And then the depth of scoring that we thought this team had, it's not really there right now. So, I mean, we didn't even get into the defensive side of things to where you were relying on offense from your defensemen. And right now, I mean, Torrey Krug hasn't gotten a point on the season. Nick Leddy's got 1 goal.
You have one player on your team with more than 1 goal.
Yeah.
We're through 7 games. You have 1 player that scored multiple goals, and they both came in the same game. It's Brandon Saad.
Yeah.
That's it.
And so this is why I look at this team right now, and can you get it right? Absolutely, because a lot of teams sit there and act like, look, 20 to 30 games is when you really start to see an identity, and teams can figure it out.
I'll give him 3. I'll give him 3 more.
Games?
Yeah. If you're this bad offensively through 10 games, that doesn't get fixed.
Let's give them 3 more against Colorado, New Jersey, and Montreal. Go up against the best.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to have to score if they're going to win those games. I said this yesterday. You're not going to beat Colorado 2-1.
If you get through the next 3 games and you're in this group of teams where you're scoring 20 or fewer goals through 10 games, then I think it is more than reasonable for us to say this team is not going to score this year. And if you're not going to score, you can't be good, man.
And this is where the roster construction comes into play. If you aren't scoring goals, if your 2 guys that are at the top aren't finding the back of the net or at least creating a dangerous line to play up against, then I look at a roster and I say, okay, well, you might have the wrong players. And guys, this is what Doug Armstrong said coming into the season. He talked about evaluating if we have the right players with the right attitude to lead this team out of this era into another one. And you're about to find that out. But that's what's concerning about this group.
The Kings that he has compared them to in 2018, 2019 were 30th in the league in goal scoring. The next season, 30th out of 31 in goal scoring. The next season, 27th in goal scoring. If that is the comparison for the Blues, it's going to be a minute, man. It's going to be a minute before this becomes a team that is legitimately competitive. They had a 3-year retool, rebuild, whatever the hell you want to call it at this point. I don't even care. And then they got back to the postseason. This might be year 2 of that for the Blues. We might be in the middle of them trying this transition and hoping that, hey, maybe this will work with Vrana. Maybe it'll work with Kapanen. If not, whatever. It's not really a big salary. It's not a long-term commitment or anything like that. They need to get this thing figured out within the next couple of seasons. We all hoped that it would get turned around quicker, but it's starting to feel like what he said was right, that it is going to take at least 3 years.
Do you guys want great news?
Sure.
Jakub Vrana is on the #1 power play unit.
Oh, now we're really going to start scoring goals.
Stanley Cup or bust now?
Yeah. It's a little disappointing. It took 7 games to get to this point, but
He showed something in the last game.
Yeah. Well, he didn't play the last game.
He really showed him
a
something.
nice suit. Yeah.
He showed something
nice
in the
suit
last
off.
practice, is what you're saying.
So his reward for getting benched for 2 games is to be promoted to the #1 unit.
Well, you got to give him cookies. So here's what the power play units are, according to Jeremy Rutherford. Stop looking at me with that face. Baby needs yum-yums.
I just need you to explain to me how this makes sense.
Well,
I'm not saying it's wrong.
It's not as Verana as it is they're breaking up that number one power play unit. I don't think this is a reward to Verana. I think this is actually
it is. If I'm Verana, I'm sitting there saying, about damn time.
Okay,
man.
but it's not Berube. It's not Berube and the coaching staff sitting in an office being like, you know what, Verana needs to go up to the unit because he looked good those 2 games.
Benching him, and then after 2 games of him being benched, your reward is we're going to move you up in the lineup and we're going to put you onto the power play unit. I don't know really what lesson is learned there.
You're not trying to make a lesson with him. It wasn't even about the power play. It was the 5-on-5. The lesson here is your number one power play unit wasn't working. Yeah. And you broke it up. Kyrou and Shen are now on the second unit with Hayes and Saad. And Kyrou, by the way. Justin Falk is on the number one power play unit. And this is, I'm looking at JR's tweet. He's got the top 1, Thomas, Booch, Falk, Verana, Kapanen, Krug, Kyrou, Shen, Hayes, Saad. Now, we'll find out who the actual number one unit is.
In the second one that you listed there, Krug, Kyrou, Shin, Hayes, Saad. That's your first unit.
Oh, see,
they promoted Hayes. That's what they did.
I can't tell if he's being sarcastic or not. He's being sarcastic.
Serious.
No, your number one unit is Thomas, Booch, and Verana.
I don't know that I agree.
Yeah, because your number one centerman is on the number one power play unit.
Is he your number one centerman?
Well, considering he's been getting the most ice time and taking those faceoffs, I would say
maybe that's something that should change too. Coming up next, we're getting into some NFL
somebody
quick
should punch him in his nose.
Put him in the press box.
Stupid face.
Taylor Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues will be back in action tomorrow night as they visit the Colorado Avalanche. And we'll have pregame coverage starting tomorrow at 7:30 with Alek Ferrario and Joey Vitale. And then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 8:30. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, it's Game 4 of the World Series as the Rangers lead that series 2-1. And we'll have Game 4 pregame coverage starting at 6. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffautoPlex.com. Are you kidding me?
Hutchinson on a stunt. He gets picked up. Wide open and overthrown is Davante Adams.
That's what it sounded like last night on ESPN as Davante Adams was missed on another deep passing play. He then went to the bench, threw his helmet in disgust, and then just looked at his hands and prayed to the gods that he would be traded today. And now Adam Schefter has come out and said there is, quote, not a chance in hell, end quote, that Davante Adams will be dealt.
Poor guy.
Alex, can you imagine?
All he wanted to do was get traded to Vegas to play with his college buddy and Derek
He
Carr.
just wanted to go back home to play with his buddy. That was it.
And then guess what?
Then
They just slapped him across the face and said, no!
And I know people are bringing up, well, he could have just stayed in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. Sure. Did you see what happened with Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, now
A,
you play
he
with
fell off
Jordan
of a
Love.
cliff, and B, he left the next year. So his opportunity was stick around to play with what we now know is a terrible quarterback in Jordan Love long term, or go to Vegas where at least it's warm, play with your college buddy, and hang out at home.
I don't know why we're surprised by this, though. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a good quarterback. He was an average quarterback that was looking good in a Kyle Shanahan system, and now you go to a Josh McDaniels team that looks like it's lost. And if I'm Davante Adams, I'm pissed, too. Because
Sure.
I was promised something completely different than the crap that you're providing me right now as a player, and I'm wasting my best years on this team. So I think it's a joke that they're not trading him. The guy doesn't want to be there. Trade the guy away.
If I'm Vegas, though, I wouldn't trade him either.
Why? You're not competing anytime soon.
Because at least I have Davante Adams.
Yeah, with a quarterback that can't hit him.
I'll
on
figure
a
that out
barn.
this offseason.
The
We'll go get Kirk
barn.
Cousins.
Oh, yeah, that'll
he's
work.
not going to be able to play for the first, 7 weeks.
One-legged Kirk Cousins is significantly better
Jimmy
than whatever it is
Garoppolo
we got right
can't
now.
hit the broadside of a barn.
This team's so bad they might get a top 5 pick. We'll draft a guy.
Who also couldn't hit the barn.
Probably. At least he's different. And I've still got Davante Adams for him to throw to. I'm not trading Davante Adams if I've got him. By the way, the Davante Adams trade in the extension that came afterwards was one of the single biggest domino effect moves of the last decade in the NFL. If you think back to what took place afterwards, that was the move and the contract that changed everything for Tyreek Hill with Kansas City. Tyreek had a contract that was basically worked out with the Chiefs. The extension gets announced from Davante Adams where it's basically $30 million a year, and Tyreek's people went back to the Chiefs and said the price of business just went up. The Chiefs said, well, no, we're not giving you $30 million a year. So find somebody who will. He did. He went down to Miami. They were like, we'll give you $30 million a year.
Damn it.
It's worked out well for Tyreek. It's worked out well for the Dolphins. It's honestly worked out well for the Chiefs. They won a Super Bowl last year. Need a wide receiver, but won a Super Bowl last year. You think about other places where this affected them. The Tennessee Titans decided to trade A.J. Brown because they didn't want to give him the new kind of money that receivers were asking for. They send him to Philadelphia. It's worked out well for A.J. Brown. It's worked out well for Philadelphia. The GM that made that deal in Tennessee has since been fired. There are so many implications. By the way, Green Bay, they really could use a Davante Adams right now to help out their former first-round quarterback. They're probably going to have a coach that ends up getting fired in the next couple of seasons. It's a lot of implications for what took place with Davante Adams, and he's really the one guy that came out of it in the worst-case scenario. All right, elsewhere in the NFL,
Otherwhere? Like stuff you
sound
wear?
like you're hungry.
Baby needs some
Elsewhere in the
Yum-Yums?
NFL, we'll get there in about 10 minutes. The Commanders and Bears have agreed to a trade that is expected to send Montez Sweat to Chicago for a 2024 second-round pick. Montez Sweat is a defensive end. He's a very good defensive end. He's an unrestricted free agent this upcoming offseason. Alex, the expectation is that the Bears will give him a long-term massive extension. What do you think about this from the Bears' perspective?
I mean, I like it. You're building towards something. I'm still not sure if you have the quarterback in place that can make you a playoff contending team. But, I mean, your defense, to me, was a bright spot last year. And then, of course, you made the trade to send, I forgot what his name was, over to Baltimore. defensive line.
Roquan Smith.
Yeah. But, I mean, look, this is, if you're making this trade, I'm imagining you're locking him up long term to keep him around with the core of your team. So you're building towards something. You're going to have a really good draft pick this year. Hopefully you can see some signs of positive steps forward with Justin Fields. Maybe within a couple of years, we're talking about a Chicago Bears team that's competing in the playoffs.
Yeah, now you've got, I would say, arguably the most important position locked up on defense, which is a guy that's going to get to the quarterback. So I like the deal from the Bears' perspective. I think they're going to look for a quarterback this offseason. I think they're going to move on from Fields, trade him, get some capital, and they look like a team that's going to be drafting pretty high up in the draft as well. So they're basically going to start anew, and they're going to start. It's different than what the Texans did because the Texans drafted their quarterback and also drafted their defensive end. This time you're trading for the defensive end, and then the following offseason, you go and acquire your starting quarterback.
Yeah, there's $100 million in cap space available to the Bears. They're more than fine when it comes to the money. I like the deal a lot. Now, you have to get him signed. That's the next thing that has to take place is you've got to work out the long-term extension, and because you paid for him, the player has all of the leverage. Like, he now can ask for basically whatever it is that he wants, and so you're going to have to overpay him. So be it. You're paying the bad team tax. That's what the Jaguars had to do to be able to get out of their hell whenever they were a terrible organization. They paid a bunch of defensive players to hopefully come help them. Now they've got a quarterback. They've got the defense in place, kinda. And you hope that it builds into a contender. That's what Chicago has to believe in now moving forward. All right, boys. We are officially at the midway point of the NFL season. Who today would be your MVP? If you had to pick an MVP of the league today, who would it be? I can't believe how difficult of a question this is to answer because I don't have an obvious one.
I don't either. I mean,
would it be Tyreek Hill? Is that crazy to say? Because he's been the most dominant player that I've watched. I think A.J. Brown is up there on that list this year.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I would have to put Jared Goff in this conversation. With the amount of offense that the Detroit Lions have created, I mean...
Mahomes is the favorite, by the way, which seems insane to me.
Someone said Christian McCaffrey, but Christian McCaffrey's been hurt for, what, 2 weeks now?
He's played every game.
Has he?
I think so, right? He's played every game.
Yeah. I think did he miss one?
I thought he missed a week.
He missed one. I could be wrong.
Because I know he scored like 16 touchdowns in the last 16 games.
I think mine would probably be either Tyreek Hill or Patrick Mahomes.
I don't think he'll win it, but as of today, I think Tyreek Hill would be my answer.
I'd put Jared Goff in there too. I mean, you've scored 200 points so far this season, which is the second most in the NFC behind the Eagles. And I mean, I'm not putting Jalen Hurts as my MVP.
I'll give you the top odds real quick. It's Mahomes, Hurts, Tua, Lamar, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence.
Wow.
Joe Burrow, Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, finally at 50-1, Tyreek Hill.
I'm sorry, but I'm not having Josh Allen anywhere towards the top as he is right now. Jared Goff is more of an MVP than Josh Allen right now.
I mean, MVP's basically become quarterback of the year.
Yeah, well, like, it's name recognition.
Yeah, but I would vote for Tyreek Hill. He's like you said, he's the most dominant player I've seen this season. He's a cheat code. He's a cheat code. Tua can just dump the ball off to Tyreek Hill, and then he's like a little water bug that just goes 70 yards. He is... We talked about left-handed bats in the playoffs in baseball. Kyle Schwarber can kill you with one swing. Tyreek Hill can kill you on any reception. He could catch the ball from his own one and go 100 yards and score a touchdown. That's how dominant he is. So I think I would vote for him. I would not... Goff, I would push back on because I saw his pick six last night. Whoo, ugly. Goff, he's just a product of that offense.
Yeah, I don't think there's a quarterback deserving of it right now. I really don't. I think my top two players in terms of the MVP today would be Tyreek Hill and Jalen Hurts, and then A.J. Brown. And then I would say third, I do think it's fair to put Christian McCaffrey up there. He has played in every game so far this season.
Oh, so we didn't miss that
McCaffrey's been excellent so far, and I think he has been the best player on that team. He has 650 rushing yards so far this year, and we know he's always a dominant piece in the passing game as well. He's added another 300 yards through the air. I think he would be third on my list. And then we can start talking about the quarterbacks. None of the quarterbacks have been good enough so far this year to be deserving of an award like this. Not yet.
I think Tua would probably lead the charge. But again, he's like when I think Tua, and this isn't to take a shot at Tua, but when I think Tua, I go, oh, he's having success because Tyreek.
Yeah, I think Tyreek's been the best player on that team.
Someone said Josh Allen is leading the NFL in touchdowns. Isn't he leading the NFL in interceptions too?
I don't think it's interceptions, but I do think he's right up there when it comes to turnovers. Because he's had some fumble issues as well. Which is always the case with him. That's something that you just have to deal with. He has on the season 8 interceptions, which is second in the league. By the way, tied with Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. All of those guys are just turning the ball over too
Mahomes
much.
was overrated.
Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll get to questions and answers, and I will eat my first.
Oh, here comes
food.
the airplane.
We're going with the squash.
Ooh, yeah.
Bad
101
choice.
ESPN.
Bad choice.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So this is the segment, huh? This is the segment when we do it.
Maybe you should do the
questions and
questions
answers
first,
here on
'cause you're gonna
101
be
ESPN. 314-399-9646 is your comfort service text line.
I can't, dude. Dude, I can't.
The squash.
Oh, God, I can't. Can you zoom in on? Oh, God. Dude, it's bad, man. This food stinks. Dude, and you gotta hold on. You gotta get a good spoonful of
Oh,
this.
it smells so bad.
Oh, my God.
Oh, that's bad.
You better put your bib on, little baby. You're gonna get it all over your pretty clothes.
Why did I agree to
Baby
this?
fussy.
People said this one isn't that bad. I think I'm going to throw up.
Oh, I'm telling you, dude, it's gonna be bad. I'm really disappointed you didn't get the puree beef.
Oh, okay.
I think you should probably do questions and answers first, because if you vomit, I'm going to have to walk out of the room. I don't do well with puke.
All right, we'll get some of your questions first.
Oh, God.
What can the Blues do if Kyra and Thomas have disappointing seasons and they're still a playoff team?
They're still a playoff team in Cairo and Thomas. I would go to the gas station and buy some lottery tickets. I don't know how that's possible that they're having disappointing seasons and they make the playoffs.
It's hot and sweaty in here now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was gonna say if they have disappointing years,
They're not making
not
the
making the
playoffs.
playoffs.
The only way they make the playoffs is if those two are having career years.
They
That's
don't-
how they make it.
correct me if I'm wrong here, but Booch would fall in this category. Outside of those three, Thomas, Kyra, Booch, you don't have a game breaker on this team. You don't offensively. I mean, I would argue probably goes showing signs of
I
being
think Verona could be.
Maybe, if he's not in the press
time.
box.
Yeah, if he gets the ice time.
So I would say, yeah, those two struggle. Then you're basically saying, hey, Booch, carry us to the promised land.
Well,
and that won't happen.
Or the way you make the playoffs, so those guys have a disappointing season, and Bennington wins a Vezina. But as we saw against Vancouver, when that dam
Some point it
breaks,
breaks.
the water overflows.
We said, is there a bigger, more over-dramatic person than BK? I don't think so, but I think it's necessary.
We'll find out when he vomits in the trash can next one.
Guys, any way Lindholm or Hannafin ends up with the Blues? Alex?
Until you get your issues corrected, no. I mean, you got two guys that don't want to stay in Calgary because they're a team that isn't competing for a playoff spot, and right now there's a lot of dysfunction. So unless you become a team that looks like you're taking major steps towards postseason, then no. Unless you're giving them a ton of money, and the Blues don't have a ton of money. I'd like them to. Do you know how you get them to sign here? You trade for them.
All right, let's do it.
Problem is,
I'm in.
You don't have a lot that Calgary was probably interested in right now.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. This one comes from the 618. Guys, I saw yesterday that the Josh Dobbs situation has gotten kind of weird in Arizona. They're going to start a rookie this weekend instead of him. Does that mean that they're trading Josh Dobbs by the end of the day today?
Yeah, probably
This
to the
was weird.
Cleveland
Did you see
Browns.
this?
Did you hear my report yesterday that I said on the air? Going to get traded to the Cleveland Browns.
They're just going to let him go to the other sideline.
Yeah, he's going to the other sideline this week. Yeah, I
They're
thought this
starting
was
Clayton Tune? The
probably
Looney Tunes? Is that what they're going with?
really, really.
Saw
like
enough
it.
from
That's
him
good.
on his one pass attempt to say, you know what, that's
could
our
be,
guy.
Could be worse. You could be going with the 5th round draft pick that the Minnesota Vikings are going to be throwing out there this week.
This might be the worst week of starting quarterbacks we've seen in years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be horrible.
Great for a 14-team fantasy superflex league.
Oh, dude.
Which you
Tonight's
BKO'd that.
waivers are going to be wild.
Tell me about it.
Somebody's going to pick up Clayton Tune and start him this week confidently.
Already put away for wire claimant for him.
You can't need him that bad.
Yeah,
I'm not
I
kidding.
have one quarterback and he's on a bye week.
You've got to have a wide receiver that can put up more points than Clayton.
I know,
Tune.
but my quarterback position is empty. I need a QB.
Oh,
I picked up Jacoby Brissett last week in case he were traded at the deadline this week.
I had Will Levis on my bench this past week.
He's
and
got to
I-
be a starter.
Well, I dropped him because I needed a wide receiver, and I picked up your dude who you BKO'd in the Patriots, and now I can't get Levis back.
by the way, I don't think Dobbs is getting traded. I think this was a true benching. I mean, look at 4 of his last 5.
How
He's
do you
thrown for
bench
under.
Josh Dobbs?
I mean, he's played terrible.
Fine, but what did you expect from Josh
That's
Dobbs?
fair, but he's thrown for under 200 yards in his last 4 of his last 5. Or right around 200.
I can't watch him eat it, man. He just did the spoon. I did this, and I don't do this anymore. He just did the spoon. Oh. Head on over to our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. No, I'm not feeding
I've
him.
seen our viewership spike.
No, what's closing your eyes gonna do?
Yeah.
I'd say hold your nose, but I don't have a clothespin big enough. Nice.
That's fair. Well played.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Don't get it in your mustache because you're going to smell it the whole time.
Here, hold on. Let me turn down the bed here.
Oh, I don't want to do this. Ready?
God.
Okay, here we go.
Wait,
You
you want
two
Alex to
spoonfuls,
feed
right? Do you
you?
want me to feed you?
3.
Here comes the airplane.
Oh, it smells so bad.
Chug it, chug it, chug it, chug
I've
it,
got
chug
like
it, chug it.
tears from
I've
how
got the
bad
camera
this-
just on him, too,
Chug
for
it, chug it,
this.
chug it, chug it, chug it, chug it. Choo choo. Oh, God. Oh, yeah, don't wash it down with anything, man. Oh, man. Oh,
That is so much worse than I was. Oh, that is really
it
horrific.
just burped.
Oh, that's so bad. Oh,
Oh, well, while BK tries to
don't
sort...
feed your kids this. Oh my
You
God.
think that's bad? Wait till you get to the peas. The peas are worse, man. Have you ever just had a pea by itself?
Oh, that was so bad.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Did you see how fast he did both spoonfuls? He tipped one and just went after the other. Oh, well, here it comes. He's going to vomit. I need to get out of the room. We've got Tinder Tuesday, free agent pitcher edition next on BK and
Oh,
Ferrario.
God.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends out at Ted Drew's off of Chippewa, the St. Louis tradition that has been going on since 1929. And you see people out there all the time. I know it's cold out. That doesn't stop you from going to get that delicious, famous frozen custard that Ted Drew's offers. And look, you can get it whatever you please. Concrete, sundae, malt, shake, floats, ice cream, sodas. And on top of that, it's more than just a dessert destination. It's a St. Louis institution. It's where families go to build traditions. Let me tell you, I went out there every Friday night growing up with my parents. We do it now with our girls. We head on out to Ted Drew's. Friday nights are Ted Drew's nights. And while you're out there, walk across the parking lot and check out their gift shop, which is full of Ted Drew's apparel. You can get kids or adults. You can get hats, drinkware, gift cards, which are the perfect gift to give somebody at Ted Drew. So go check them out just off of Chippewa and find out why Ted Drew's famous frozen custard really is good, guys and gals.
The smarter we out that big pen.
Alex and T-Bone on BK.
What's
It's BK
happening
and
over there?
Ferrario here on 101 ESPN.
Who does that, man? Are you a freaking animal? Jesus Christ. You just burped baby food in my face. What is wrong with you?
That was not a good segment for me.
Oh, my God.
All right, it's time for a Tinder Tuesday. Here on 101 ESPN, Jim Bowden put out his projected contracts for every top free agent. And Alex, it is time for me to ask you and T-Bone if you are swiping right if you like it, or left if you don't, with some of the top free agent starting pitchers that are available this offseason. You guys understand the rules?
Hit me with it.
Right if you like it, left if you don't. You get one super swipe. So be sure to use it wisely. All right, guys, let's start out with this one. Yoshi Yamamoto, 7 years, $210 million. This is a gentleman that is 25 years old. He is a 3-time winner of the Cy Young Award over in Japan. He's coming over. He's going to be posted this offseason. 7 years, $30 million per season. Alex, you swiping right or left on Yamamoto?
Boys, I hate to do this so early, but it's time for a super swipe. This is better than I thought it was going to be. I mean, yeah, it's $30 million, but it's 7 years of a dude who's, 25 years old?
Indeed.
I'm all over this one. I think when it comes down to getting that top caliber pitcher, this is the best you can ask for. And this is the guy that's been screaming for Aaron Nola. But if I can go 7 years, $30 million a year, and get a guy who's 25 years old and can become the ace, yeah, I'm super swiping that one right now. Frankly, I might consider 8 years with this so that I can outbid other people.
I would swipe right. I actually like this deal. For someone that's 25 years old, 7 years, you get him to his age 32, you're getting all the prime years for a guy that projects to be better than Kodai Senga. Senga was awesome for the Mets this year. So absolutely, I would swipe right. I'm going to save my super swipe. I'm going to be a little bit more cautious before I start really falling in love.
Why? So you could use it on James Paxton, who will break after the first game of the season?
Maybe
We're not
not.
there yet. We're not there yet. We'll get to his contract.
Oh, I know what he's going to do.
I'm going to swipe right on this one as well. I'm not a super swipe at this particular rate.
Who is better to super swipe?
Later on in the show today, we will talk about what I would super swipe for Yamamoto. We'll get to that coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. But I'm swiping right on this. If you can get him at $30 million a year, yeah, I like that. And it's a 7-year deal. You're getting him through his age 32 season. You're getting the prime of his career. And you just hope to hell that this guy ends up being as good as a guy like Kodai Senga. If he becomes that and you get that for the next 7 years, yeah, sign me up immediately for something like that. All right, the next one, we're going to have 3 different pitchers that all fit into the exact same criteria, boys. Because according to Jim Bowden, Jordan Montgomery, Aaron Nola, and Blake Snell are all projected to be right around the 5-year, $125 million range. So 5 years at $25 million per year. They're all 30 years old as they hit free agency, all going to enter their age 31 seasons next year. Alex, you swiping right or left on Monty, Nola, and Snell at 5 and 125?
I'm swiping right on Monty and Nola, and I'm swiping left on Snell.
Oh, wow.
Snell worries me, man. This is a hell of a deal for a guy who's probably going to get a Cy Young this year. And I mean, you're getting everything you can ask for, but I think you're only getting it for 2 years. And then I think you're going to be paying $25 million for the next 3 years of a bullpen arm that might not even be a good enough bullpen arm for you. Monty, I think you're going to get a really good return on that deal. Same with Aaron Nola, but Blake Snell I'm a little worried about.
So I would swipe left on Monty because I have some fears that he's going to get overpaid this offseason, and he should get paid this offseason. I mean, he's been a hell of a pitcher in the postseason, but he doesn't have the stuff for me. I would swipe right on the Aaron Nola deal. I would not give him $200 million. I know we had that conversation a couple weeks ago. 5 years at $25 million per, I'm okay with that. I'm willing to do that one. Blake Snell, 5 by 125. Super swipe!
Super swiping on
He's got the best stuff on the market, and I thought he'd get the Rodon deal, which is 6 years at $27 million, and I thought he could even get 7 years too, because he's going to win. This will be his second Cy Young. But if it's 5 by 125, it's not as risky long term. You're probably going to get 3 to 4 years that are going to be really good in this contract. And it's at $25 million, which isn't that bad because I think he's a guy that could get close to 30 potentially. So I would absolutely super swipe the Blake Snell deal because he's got the best stuff on the market.
So I'm swiping right on both Nola and Snell, and I love this deal for Blake Snell. In all seriousness, I would absolutely sign up for that. $25 million a year. The upside is incredible. The downside is there. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's as low as Jordan Montgomery's downside. Now, I like Jordan Montgomery a lot. You could see how it goes wrong, though, over the course of this contract, either with injury, which is the case for any pitcher. I understand that, but he has had a little bit of an injury history a few years ago, or with just overall ineffectiveness. He's a left-handed pitcher that doesn't have crazy high velocity. If any of that stuff were to diminish, it can go quick for lefties because of how many right-handed hitters there are across the sport. So I would swipe left on Jordan Montgomery. I don't want to pay him $25 million a year. He doesn't have the durability, the stability of a guy like Aaron Nola, and he does not have anywhere close to the upside of a guy like Blake Snell. I'm going to take both of those players before I take Montgomery, so I would swipe left on Monty, right on Nola and Snell. Next one up is a guy that we've spoken a lot about. People have very strong feelings about a Sonny Gray. The projected contract from a former general manager who is now writing for The Athletic and Jim Bowden. Sonny Gray, 3 years, $64 million. So $21 million per year, Alex. He is older. He's about 33 years old. Swiping right or left on Sonny Gray at 3 years, $21 million per season.
Yeah, this screams Cardinals move. Man, 21 seems a little high, but it's 3 years, and I think we've seen the durability that Sonny Gray can provide you. Mind you, this is not the only move. I think this is the number 2 move compared to the number 1 that I super swiped on, or even if it's Aaron Nola. But if I'm getting 3 years for Sonny Gray and paying $21 million, I think that's a good enough deal that makes this team competitive, so I'm right.
Yeah, I'm swiping right, too. He's got great stuff. He's a perfect number 2 to bring into this rotation, and it's just 3 years. A lot can go right in 3 years, and even if it does go wrong, you're out of that contract pretty quickly, and I think that's right about the market I thought he would be at.
Super Swipe!
This is the least surprising super swipe.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like T-Bone saying James Paxton.
You're telling me that over the last 5 years, a guy that had ERAs of 2.8, 3.7, 4.1, 3.1, and 2.8, he was under a 3.2 ERA in 3 of those 5 years? I'm getting that guy for $20 million a year? Yeah, let me get that guy in here. We'll put him in as the number 2 starter, and we'll figure out what to do around that. You have to sign somebody that is better than Sonny Gray. He should not be your opening day starter next year. That is my firm stance on the matter. But if you bring in Sonny Gray and he is the game 2 starter that you're expecting to have going into the postseason, you're in a really good spot as a starting rotation. That puts in Miles Michaelis as your number 3 most likely. Steven Matz as your number 4 or 5, depending on what you do at the back end of your rotation. I feel really good about where the Cardinals are at if Sonny Gray is their second best addition this offseason. Next one up is a guy that we haven't spent a ton of time on because he does technically have an opt-out clause that he would have to exercise first. Eduardo Rodriguez, 5 years, $90 million per year, essentially giving him the Wilson Contreras contract from a year ago. Alex, are you swiping right or left on Eduardo Rodriguez at 5 years and $90 million?
I'm swiping right on this as my fallback if Sonny Gray doesn't happen. Because if I can't get Sonny Gray, and mind you, my hope is I'm getting Yamamoto or Aaron Nola, if I can't get Sonny Gray, then Eduardo Rodriguez is the route I'm going to go because I think he provides a lot of what Sonny Gray offers you. You've got the upside. I think the upside of Eduardo Rodriguez might be a little bit better than Sonny Gray, but you've got the swing and miss stuff. You got the guy who can give you innings. You've got some postseason experience. So I'm going to swipe right on this one because if he's available still and I don't get that second guy, I love this option.
Yeah, I agree with everything Alex just said there. I would swipe right. 5 years feels like a lot, but I mean, $90 million, that's less than $20 million a year. I absolutely would sign up for this as a fallback option. So I'm going to swipe right because if he pitches well, upside is he's a number 2.
I'm with you guys. All of these seem kind of reasonable, don't they?
Yeah, that's why they're probably wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say all of these add $10 million a year.
Maybe that's why. I think it's because all of them kind of fit into that mid-tier pitching market. None of them are like, you don't have this year a Jacob deGrom. You don't have Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander. Those guys aren't available. Instead, what you have is players that are kind of in that mid-tier, really solid, but nobody that's going to kind of knock your socks off, right? And they're all right around that 30-year-old range as well, so you're not getting guys that are getting to the market super early. I would swipe right on Eduardo Rodriguez at 5.90. I do agree with you, though, Alex. It does make me wonder, are all of these off a little bit in terms of they're a little cheaper than what it's actually going to end up costing a team? All right, next one up. T-Bone, this has been a guy that you've talked a lot about. Now we are into the third best starter signings. Lucas Giolito, 2 years, $24 million. Swiping right or left on the former White Sox, Guardians, and Angels pitcher.
Left.
Really?
That guy looks good on the photo, but I saw him in person. I'm swiping left. He fell apart down the stretch, and I don't.
For 2 years and $24 million, you wouldn't do it.
No, you need certainty in this rotation. You need a guy that when I bring him in, I don't have a project on my hands, and he's a project. So I'm swiping left. Again, he's the typical, looks good in his Tinder profile picture.
Even as the third best starter.
Yeah, no, left.
Yeah, I'm swiping left too. There's other guys available either via trade or on the free agency that I feel like I can unlock potential rather than Lucas Giolito. He looked like a broken man after these. He honestly looked like what Jack Flaherty looked like when you traded him away. A guy that just lost it all and you're not sure if you can get it back.
I would swipe right on this. This is a guy that's been durable since 2018. This is the number of starts that he's made by year in terms of the full seasons. This is not counting the 2020 season, which, by the way, he made every start that was available to him. 32, 29, 31, 30, 33. The guy is available every fifth day, or at least that's been his history so far in his major league career. Now, you're absolutely correct, T-Bone. The recent results are less than encouraging. The last 2 years, he has a 4.9 ERA, and that's not really him getting unlucky. That's been the results that were expected for him. You bring him in here, put him into a pitcher-friendly park, have him as your number 4 or 5 starter, $12 million a year. You're basically on the Steven Matz contract. I would be totally fine with that, as long as it's a 1 or a 2 year deal. You can't give him a long-term deal. I would want to do a 1 with an opt-out, honestly.
I'd rather trade for Shane Bieber or Tyler Glasnow than this.
That's fair. The money plus not having to give up players on this one and him not being attached to a draft pick, I would absolutely consider Lucas Giolito on this specific price. All right, next one up. Seth Lugo, another one that would be the third best starter that you're bringing in. T-Bone, I know you've talked about him in the past. Are you interested in a Seth Lugo? Swipe right if you like it, swipe left if you don't.
I'm swiping right. I think he's a perfect number 5 starter for your rotation. You look at last year, 26 starts, 3.57 ERA, 8.6 strikeouts per 9. He's a good number 5 starter. And I would definitely bring him in on this year. 2-year contract, that's what I'm expecting for a number 5. These are the kind of guys, I would say he's probably even taken my heart a little bit more than James Paxton because Paxton got hurt down the stretch. I really like Seth Lugo. 2-year deal, that seems about right for me.
I'm swiping right on this one as well because I think he can be a 5 starter for you, or you can move him to the bullpen later in the season, especially if Zach Thompson picks up or if somebody kind of emerges in the minors, then Seth Lugo is a awesome piece to have in your bullpen.
Yeah, I'm swiping right on this one as well. 2 years, $20 million. If you have him or Lucas Giolito as the third best starter that you signed this offseason, I'm more than happy with it. All right, the last couple that we're going to get to, we'll put them into one criteria because they're both the legit number 5 starter conversation. One of them's currently pitching in the World Series, Andrew Heaney. 2 years, $25 million. Essentially the same as what Lucas Giolito is projected to get this offseason. Or James Paxton, the guy that we know Tanner Hendrickson absolutely adores, the former Red Sox starter, 1 year, $8 million. So, Alex, are you swiping right or left on Heaney at 2 years, 25, and James Paxton at 1 year, $8 million?
I'm swiping left on both of these guys.
Oh, interesting.
They don't really interest me. Like James Paxton, like T-Bone mentioned, like, yeah, I like the idea. That's a pretty decent deal, but the injuries scare the hell out of me, and I've stood strong on that hill for a long time. Andrew Heaney, like, he's had a good season, but I'd be a little worried of like what he did can translate if he comes to the Cardinals. So I'm gonna swipe left on both of them.
I'm out on both of these two. I'll go first.
Why did you make it sound like that I was a jerk for saying that?
Andrew Heaney hasn't been able to be fixed by either the Dodgers or the Texas Rangers. They both have very good staffs. I don't want to be the next one that tries to fix him when he's going into his age, 33 season? I'm good. I don't need to see anything more from Andrew Heaney. I know he's not the answer here in St. Louis, hasn't been the answer elsewhere when contenders tried to make him into that player. I'm more interested in Paxton at 1 year, $8 million, but I would at that point just rather go the Giolito route, the Seth Lugo route, give an extra year, not a whole lot more money. I think I'm out. So swiping left on both Heaney and Paxton for me.
I'm definitely out on Heaney. I would swipe left. I think you can get better numbers from Zach Thompson if you started him as a number 5. Paxton, I would still swipe right, but you guys are definitely right in worrying about the injury history, because if you do sign him, you need to plan on him starting 10 games and Zach Thompson starting basically the other 20. So he's a little bit risky. I think if he's healthy, though, he's been a really good pitcher. So I'm willing to take the risk on it. You just hope, fingers crossed, he doesn't end up getting hurt, but I would definitely swipe right on him. Let's be honest, guys. Every lefty that we said on this list, Mo would definitely go super swipe.
So
Michael,
for
put
what
your
it's worth,
scuba gear on.
I know that we thought all of these seemed a little low in terms of the average annual value. I went over to Spot Rack because they also put out projections for their starting pitching market. All of them are right in line with what Jim Bowden is projecting in terms of what they think these guys are going to get on an average basis. Now, they had Aaron Nola with an extra year. They have him at 6 years instead of 5 years. They've got Sonny Gray right around the exact same area. They have Eduardo Rodriguez making a little bit more. Instead of making 18 a year, they've got him at 20 a year. So technically a little bit more there. They've got Giolito getting a couple extra years. If he gets into the 4-year market, I'm not interested at all in that. That's what Spot Rack has projected. They've got Seth Lugo getting an extra year, but still at $10 million per season. I mean, it's kind of... It feels like these are kind of the ranges that you're going to be looking at going into this offseason. So it really does become a matter for Mo of finding out who's interested in them and then going out and getting it done, man. Just get the guys that you're looking for. If it ends up being true, Alex, that Aaron Nola is looking for a 5-year deal worth $125 million and Sonny Gray is willing to sign a 3-year deal worth right around $60 to $65 million, just sign both of them and call it a day.
That's your offseason.
It's $45 million per year. Over a 3-year stretch where you have to pay both of them. You've got some money coming off of the books once again after the season. You can make that work within the constraints of your current roster. And if you decide not to tender a few of the guys that are currently up for contracts this offseason and arbitration as well, that's already an extra $10 million that's coming off of the books for this year where you can use that towards your bullpen. I think that's the route, man. Go out there, get Nola, get Sonny Gray, and then trade for that number 5 starter.
And look,
call it a day.
And I know how the offseason goes. Players are going to want to see what's out there, especially if you're Aaron Nola, but get this done as quick as possible. Like if you're Mo, approach these two and say, what is it that we can sign on the dotted lines to get this done? We want you, and we want you guys to be the top of our rotation.
I think so. I'm just going to make this prediction, and I think Cardinals fans will freak out when it happens. They shouldn't, though. It'll be kind of like what happened with the Blues a few years ago when they went into the offseason and the first move that they made was signing Tyler Bozak. And everybody freaked out because they were like,
Sonny Gray.
That cannot be your number 1 center. Do not do this, Army. And people were mad, like big mad that day. And then later on, I think it was even that night, they end up making the trade for Ryan O'Reilly. And it's like, oh, okay, now I kind of understand what Army is trying to do here. I could see something like that where, absolutely, Alex, exactly what you said happens. They say Sonny Gray is the first guy that we're going to sign because he is the top of that second tier in their mind. They're going to say, let's go get Sonny Gray, get him signed up. We'll make that done. And then we'll look at the trade options versus the starting pitching market for that number 1 starter, and we'll decide what we want to go with there because there are multiple options in that bucket of what we're looking for. So don't freak out if Sonny Gray's the first one they sign. That does not necessarily mean they're done in the offseason.
Don't freak out when they sign James Paxton and say, all right,
No,
good deal.
That one you should celebrate because that is the number 1 that they've been searching for.
Coming up next, would you rather see Mizzou beat Georgia but finish with a 9-3 record, or lose to Georgia and finish 10-2? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Big game coming up this weekend for the Missouri Tigers. Mizzou at Georgia. It's a 2:30 start in that one on CBS. Did you guys see they've got like the third tier crew going to that one? The top CBS crew is going to Alabama versus LSU. That's where game day is going as well.
There's disrespect floating around with the Missouri Tigers, and they'll just prove the doubters wrong.
STP, something to prove. That's been
Is that what STP stands for?
Long.
I saw Drink's tweet when Ryan
Ryan Wingo,
and I'm like, what does that stand for? Like, did he mean to put an F instead of a P?
No. STP, something to prove. That's what Missouri's motto has been so far this year.
Just type it out, No labels.
No, man,
So the reason why I bring this up, Alex, is because I heard Gabe DeArmond of Power Mizzou ask an interesting question on his podcast the other day. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. Would you rather, and you guys can get your answers in on this as well on the text line, it's 314-399-9646. Would you rather see Mizzou beat Georgia but finish the season 9-3?
Ugh.
Or lose to Georgia and finish the season 10-2. So in the scenario where you beat Georgia, you win this weekend. You beat the number one team in the country on the road. It is the best win that anybody's had so far this year. There is no close second. But then you lose 2 of your next 3 games against Tennessee, Florida, or Arkansas. Option 2, you lose this weekend. You lose on the road at Georgia. No harm, no foul. Everybody loses on the road at Georgia. But you win out. And you end up as the second best team in the SEC East. You get to double-digit victories. You go to a nice bowl game this year. But you don't have a signature win. You lost to LSU. You lose to Georgia. Your wins came against Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, basically the mid-tier of the SEC. And then you got a really nice home win against Kansas State earlier this year. I don't mean to overlook that. Which of those scenarios would you rather see for Mizzou this year, Alex?
Correct me because I might be wrong here. 10-2, you wouldn't have a shot at the SEC championship game.
Georgia would have the head-to-head victory. You would have 2 losses. They would be 3 games up with 3 games to play.
But 9-3, you wouldn't either, would you?
Correct. Either way, you don't win the SEC East. But you have a win against Georgia on the road, signature victory. That'll be the single best Mizzou win since the last time you beat Georgia.
But what does that really...
So more than a decade.
But what does that really get you? Like, it gets you, what, bragging rights? Like, as much as I would love to see that Georgia win, then losing 2 of the remainder of the games, like, you're talking some bad losses.
Yeah, you're losing to probably Tennessee and Florida would be most likely the way that would go. So you beat Georgia, and then the next 2 weeks you lose both of those.
That would be very frustrating for me, watching how great of a season this has been compared to if they lose to Georgia in a tight game, but then win the rest of the way and pick up 10 victories. Like, that feels, and I might be completely off with this, but that feels more significant in terms of the overall goal than winning against Georgia and then losing to Florida and Tennessee at the end of the season.
So we got 2 texts back-to-back that I think are really interesting, and they speak to the differences in how you view this perspective-wise. The first one comes from the 314. Guys, if they lose to Georgia and finish 10-2, that feels better, because if you beat Georgia and finish 9-3, it feels like you wasted the fact that you just beat Georgia. Another one. BK, this is a stupid question. Of course you take beating the number 1 team every time. Missouri needs to prove that it can beat Georgia or Alabama. Otherwise, you'll never be more than the second best team in the SEC East. I get both perspectives. I really do. And it's why I found it to be an interesting question when Gabe posed it on his podcast. I think I would take the 10-2 season, because it's such a significant step forward. You're going to get an awesome bowl game out of that, and you'll finish the season ranked in the top 15 nationally. That being said, man, the feeling of being top 10 nationally after beating Georgia and being the team that finally did it. They're on, what, a 25-game winning streak right now? For you to end the longest winning streak in the sport right now, go down to Georgia on national TV, the spotlight game on CBS, and you do it there, for you to be the first team to go on the road and beat the number 1 team in the country in 11 years. Nobody else has been able to do that. I do think it speaks to Eli Drinkwitz, and it speaks to what this program is building. It speaks to the talent that you're assembling, that you had the ability to go do that, and you punched up. You finally were able to beat a team that was clearly and definitively better than you. If you don't do that this week, and then you finish out the season beating Tennessee, beating Florida, beating Arkansas, what you really did was beat all the teams that you were supposed to this year and lost to the teams that were better than you. So I would probably take the 10-2 season just because winning 10 games is awesome. But I understand why anybody would take the win over the number one team in the country.
Yeah, I would take the 10-2 season as well, because though I understand the perspective of, well, hey, you punched up, you beat number one Georgia. If you lay back-to-back duds or you lose 2 of 3, it feels like that's not to take anything away from what that victory would be, but it would be viewed nationally as more of just a one-off. Mizzou they punched up, but it's probably not. They're not here to stay because they just laid back-to-back eggs.
I don't care what people nationally think, for what it's worth.
Okay, but I think that's what the story is going to be, and I would probably side with that story, because if you lay eggs against teams that you're supposed to beat, even though you surprised Georgia, to me, it's out the window. That was okay. You just played well for one game, and then you lay back-to-back eggs. I'd much rather have the 10-2, and though now we say you should beat Tennessee, although I would say that's probably a toss-up still.
Agreed.
And you should beat Florida, and you should beat Arkansas. I think the thing, though, with that is those games were not viewed that way coming into the year. So 10-2 is very much a success. I think we threw a lot of these games into the 50-50 category coming into the year because I thought they were 7-5 team.
Yeah, but I think that as you see these teams play, you can see that there's changes that have taken place, and Florida's just not very good. I think Florida might finish the season with 6 wins. They're 5-3 right now. Their remaining schedule is Arkansas, LSU, Missouri, Florida State. I think they have one more win, and it's this weekend against Arkansas. After that, I think they're going to lose on the road at LSU, at Florida, and then finish out the season with a boat race at home against Florida State. So I think they're just not very good, and Arkansas is terrible. Arkansas is horrific. They can't score. They are 2-6 on the season. They're probably going to win one more game. That's against FIU. I think their coach might be fired the week that they come into, or the week that they play against Missouri.
And that's why you can't lose to 2 of those 3 teams that we just said. Because everything you said with, I agree. And that's why, like, if you beat Georgia, yeah, that's a great win. You lay back-to-back eggs like that, though, I'm sorry, but 10-3 feels disappointing then.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, everybody had Mizzou going 6-6. Take the 10 wins. Not everybody had Mizzou going 6-6.
I say just this whole conversation is stupid, and they should beat Georgia and win out.
Yeah, somebody on the text line said, God, why can't they win 11 games? They can. It's just a...
Stop giving me these 2 damn scenarios then.
I had Mizzou going 8-4, 9-3 this year. I think, Alex, you did too, didn't you?
Well, I said 10, and Tanner laughed at me.
T-Bone was the one that had him winning 6 games because he's a hater. Coming up next.
Drake finally proved he can coach.
What? Yeah.
What would it take for us to believe that the Blues are transitioning from a retool to a rebuild? And what would that look like? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tomorrow night as they visit the Colorado Avalanche, and we'll have pregame coverage starting at 7:30 with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale, and then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 8:30. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, Game 4 of the World Series as the Rangers lead that series 2-1, and we'll have pregame coverage starting at 6. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find a road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Blues. What would have to happen for this to become a rebuild versus what we're currently looking at here in St. Louis, which I believe is a retool? I think it's fair for all of us to say that about this team. Alex, one thing that has to happen is this offense just has to continue struggling the way that it has. They have scored... They're scoring an average of 1.8 goals per game so far this year. That means through 10 games, you would expect them to score roughly 18 goals. They've got 3 more games to get there. Hopefully, they're able to outperform what I just suggested. Alex, if they don't, if they score 20 or fewer goals in the first 10 games, there are only 8 other teams since 2016 that have done that. Of those 8 teams, 7 of them ended up picking inside of the top 6 in the upcoming draft. The other one that didn't picked 11th. Every single one of those teams missed the playoffs. All of them scored 86 points or fewer over the course of the season. Alex, when you think about it in your mind of what would have to happen for you to believe that this is a rebuild versus a retool, what comes to mind?
So I think a couple of things pop up to me. One is if you're drafting in the top 5 this year, you're kind of going backwards in the sense of you were top 10. Now you're worse than you were last year, but yet the core that is supposed to be in place taking you to this next era of Blues hockey hasn't stepped up to that level. So that's one of them. But then the other thing that I think has to happen for this team to really look at their roster and say, hey, this might be longer than what we originally thought, is if it's a down year by Thomas and Kyrou. If you get to the point where these two guys haven't taken that step, and look, defensively, I think Kyrou has taken that step that we've all wanted to see. Like, he looks like a guy who you could put out there in any scenario, and he's making plays for you.
By the way, just on that real quick, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch had an article earlier today about Kyrou and what he's done defensively. T-Bone mentioned this before the show. He said all of the right things that you would want to hear from him in that article, and he has been doing so since the preseason. So credit to him for all of that.
He looks like a guy that you would put out there in a scenario. Frankly, people are going to laugh at this because the offense hasn't been there, but he's the equivalent of kind of what William Nylander has been with the Toronto Maple Leafs in terms of you put him out there in any scenario and you know that something good's going to happen. So that sense has been good, but if the offense doesn't come, if this is a line that you're putting out there against other teams' top lines and they're coming away with no points or an assist and you're losing these hockey games, well, then you really do have to consider where you're at because you've got these 24 and 23-year-old kids that are supposed to be getting into this next era, and if the winning hasn't followed and yet you're still losing, that's not this 3-year retool that they pictured. I mean, I'm looking at the history of the LA Kings just in the draft sense, and to Doug Armstrong's point, you know, the Kings in 2017 drafted 11th overall. The next year they drafted 20th overall. Then they went 3 straight years where they drafted 5th, 2nd, and 8th. And then they got to the point where they really started to compete and selecting in the second round, trading away first-round picks. But they had the pieces in place that could kind of take that young group into the next level in Kopitar and Doughty. And right now you're relying on Thomas and Kyrou to do that. So that, to me, would signify, hey, this might be headed towards a rebuild instead of a retool.
I think you're right in terms of those are the two that kind of dictate where this goes. Because I think if one of, not both, but one of, Thomas or Kyrou does not end up being the number 1 center or the number 1 winger that you thought, then I think things get a little bit more complicated for the St. Louis Blues. And offensively, I mean, I look at this roster now, and we talked about roster construction earlier, and we've mentioned this. It feels like you've got a lot of, like, third-liners on this team. And not only third-liners, but third-liners that are under contract for the next 2-3 years. So you're almost stuck if you don't have Thomas and Kyrou. And honestly, Buchnevich, I'm going to throw him into this conversation too. If those 3 can't figure out a way to build a dominant line dynamic, I think you got to blow it up, quote unquote, by trading at least probably Buchnevich, who will fall into that conversation, whether that be in the offseason or this season, if you're projecting towards being a bottom 10 team in the NHL again. And then also, too, you got to explore the idea of, okay, if Robert Thomas is not a number one center and he's making $8 million, what do we do with him? Do we have him as a number two centerman? Do we go out and add a number one centerman? And that's the kind of stuff you've then got to explore in an offseason. But then you're talking 2-3 years, I think, before you can really build a full roster around Kyrou, and that's the only guy you have.
Someone brings up a good question. They say, don't you need a top 5 pick to expedite this retool? No. Top 5 pick means you're waiting for that kid. Now, look, you could get somebody who steps into a role if he's a really good pick that could play this year. I mean, look at what Leo Carlson's been doing with the Anaheim Ducks. But typically that top 5 pick, you're still waiting 3 years to get him to the level. I mean, Quentin Byfield was selected second overall by the LA Kings, and this is his first year where it seems like he's at the level that they needed from him. So a top 5 pick makes you good, but it makes you good in 3 to 5 years. It doesn't make you good right away.
So from the 2021 NHL draft, out of the top 5 picks, 4 of the 5 have played at least 90 games so far this year. Only 2 have scored more than 20 goals so far in their respective careers. Now, the other 2 are defensemen, so it's worth noting that. And one of those guys is Luke Hughes, who's expected to be a really good player for the New Jersey Devils. But, yeah, I mean, is anybody saying, hey, you know what's going to really expedite the Columbus Blue Jackets rebuild? Kent Johnson. That's the guy that's going to do it for him.
Yeah, they're still waiting for all those top picks to do it for him.
Mason McTavish seems to be a really good player for the Anaheim Ducks, but yeah, it's going to take a minute. And then I think you're going to have to wait. It is going to take some time. But yeah, it would expedite things. I do think that if you had a top 5 pick and you just completely bottomed out this year, the talent level is just different picking in the top 5 than it is picking at 8, 9, or 10. Look at this past year's draft, man. If you this season, instead of having they have the 8th pick, 9th pick, 10th pick overall, if you were in the top 5, you're talking about Connor Bedard, Leo Carlson, Adam Fantilli, Will Smith, or David Reinbacher. Those guys were the elite of the elite. Or you could have had a chance to be able to go out there and get Matvei Mikov. Now, again, you could take some time to see those guys. Only 3 of the 5 players that I mentioned have appeared in an NHL game so far this year. But the ones that have been pretty good so far. Mm-hmm. So it changes things, definitely. It doesn't immediately make you good, though.
No.
It'll take another couple of years.
I mean, honestly, a top 5 pick can expedite a retool if you trade that top 5 pick to something to get NHL-ready players. But and somebody texted in and said it's way too early for this, guys. Give them a little bit more of a chance. Look, there's still plenty of time to go, but you're really relying, if you're the Blues and if you're Doug Armstrong, on Kyrou and Thomas to take that step into being the best of the best on the ice. And, I mean, we've gone through games to where some games they've looked really good, but 2. But other games, they were outplayed by the other team's top line. The Arizona Coyotes game, you were outplayed. They were outplayed by Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz. This game against the Vancouver Canucks, you were outplayed by Elias Pettersson and Andrei Kuzmenko. And those are guys that you have to outplay both on the offense and the defensive side of the puck. And if you don't, then this retool is going to take a little bit longer.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. A little bit of NFL news to pass along today is the NFL's trade deadline. The Cardinals are sending Josh Dobbs to the Vikings. According to a report that was just released, Kevin O'Connell says that Jaron Hall is still expected to start this week. Josh Dobbs, though, they're hoping to have him ready to play if needed. So it sounds like Jaron Hall will get the first crack at the starting job in Minnesota. My guess is by next week, you'll see Josh Dobbs as the starting quarterback for the Vikings. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up taking over after halftime if things go poorly with Jaron Hall in that one. So that is the latest move that has taken place. A quarterback on the move. It is Josh Dobbs going to Minnesota. They play on the road at Atlanta on Sunday. Coming up next, we're diving into the junk drawer, and I believe I've got some peas to eat. Oh, God, that is thick.
I'm telling you, you thought the last one was bad. You will vomit with this one.
Ugh,
let's see me puke next
gross.
year on 101 ESPN. and T-Bone on BK coming up here in a little less than 5 minutes. I'll eat some pureed peas.
Some pureed peas.
Looks delicious.
Oh, man.
Chunky.
Oh, God. Peas aren't good, like, by themselves. You could, like, soak peas in butter and put salt and cook them, and they're still nasty.
There are 60 peas in each tub.
God, seriously, my daughter despises peas.
I don't
Gave it to her, threw it on the ground.
It's a very short ingredient list. Just peas and water.
Peas.
Yummy.
There's water.
Oh, there is. Well, good. We don't need to wash it down with anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to implement a new rule. You can't take a drink until at least 2 minutes following
I
a
think that's
spoonful.
fair.
Yeah, you can go straight to hell.
You got to let the food
What, you should
simmer.
have brought in a sippy cup and put some milk in there.
You got to let
That's
the
fair,
food.
but
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
not
I
doing
should have
that.
actually.
I hate milk, so I'm not doing that.
No, I would have put water. We could have done Kara's breast milk in it.
That's also not funny.
It's not supposed to be funny. It's a punishment.
All right, Alex, what do you have for us today in the junk?
Well, look, buddy, you're in a bad place right now,
I am.
and it's a special day today, and I kept you guys in the dark for this one because I wanted to surprise you. I got a special junk drawer for everybody. Okay. It's time for some Halloween dad jokes, and I've got music. T-Bone! Oh, man.
You got music for
There's
this, too?
music and everything. Hold on, let the beat slap.
Never say that again.
Oh, yeah. This music slaps right now. Hey, guys. What did Dracula call his interior design book?
Gosh.
Fang Shui.
Okay, that one was good.
That was good.
I don't say that very often about these.
Why don't vampires ever attack Taylor Swift? This is, current events. Because she's got bad blood.
T-Bone doesn't get the reference.
No,
so
I
he's
got
just
that
funny.
stupid. Why don't mummies have friends?
They're tied up.
They're too much wrapped in themselves.
I knew something was wrapped up. I didn't know what, though.
I like this one. What does a panda ghost eat?
A panda ghost?
A panda ghost. So a ghost of a panda. Bamboo.
Don't laugh at that one. That one wasn't that good. I knew it was going to be bamboo. How'd you not get
Where do ghosts buy their food? At the ghostery store.
That one was...
That was
do that one
bad.
coming.
What do you call a skeleton that cleans?
I have no idea on that one.
He's a grim sweeper. Oh, BK, this is actually timely. You'll like
Go
this
to
one.
hell.
What's a pumpkin's favorite sport? Squash. Get it? Because you just ate squash a little bit ago. Okay, I got 3 more, and then we'll listen to him eat peas and vomit. Why do you see so much hair when a werewolf drops his pants? Because it's a full moon.
That one was That one was good.
There you go.
What does a ghost do when he gets in the car? He puts on a sheet belt. This is by far my favorite
Full
one.
moon one was the best.
This is an even
It's
better
tough to
one.
beat that one.
Why can't a man ghost have babies? Because he lacks a Halloweenie.
Still not as good as the other one.
I feel like he's got a Halloweenie. Would be better.
He lacks a Halloweenie. He can't have kids because he lacks a Halloweenie.
If it's hollow, though, and it's a weenie, you also wouldn't be able to have kids in that scenario.
Just eat your peas.
Either way, the weenie's not working for the ghost. And that's why he can't have babies. Now you made me explain my joke. So I hope everyone has a wonderful Halloween. Make sure you tell your kids the ones I just came up with.
Somebody texted me, what do you call a whale with no underwear?
Some bad things came to my mind, and I can't say them what.
Free Willy. It's harder to open.
Someone said simple minds are easily amused. Yeah, pretty much. I sit at home and try and make my 2-year-old laugh. She doesn't understand half the things I say.
Alex, I'm not looking forward to this. Huh? I underestimated how hard this one was going to be because it's a mental thing.
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
mental.
God,
wait,
this is thick.
Wait till you go to the bathroom after you eat this stuff.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, I know. Oh God, I can't.
Let me see this.
It looks
What
like
we got
Jell-O.
here?
It looks like. Oh,
Can
Get
the
on
audience
camera.
see this?
Now they can. Oh, that looks
It's
disgusting.
like strangely, I don't.
Don't get any peas on our camera, please.
I'm gonna have to stir this up a little bit.
Oh man.
Oh, because that'll help.
Oh god. Seriously, that is so thick. Oh,
Can I do one bite this time?
nope, two
No,
bites.
2 bites.
One
2
bite.
spoonfuls.
Fill
Everybody
that
knows
damn
rules.
spool up. Otherwise, I'm feeding you. Oh man, that looks like 10-day-old milk.
By the way, you guys can watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/101 ESPN.
My stomach kind of hurts watching this.
SEO. It's the Air Alliance team is who the cams are presented by.
Make sure you don't get anything on the mic.
And tell this dad joke while I'm doing this out.
You want another one? No, because you might
you
might spit peas
On
everywhere.
the text line there.
tops of the text line.
There's one on the top of the text line. Why doesn't Ken and Barbie have kids? Because Ken comes in a different box. Oh, what did it taste like? You didn't even eat it
I
yet.
tried to smell it first and it was a mistake. It was a huge mistake.
Oh, I can't read that one at the top. That's inappropriate.
He's already ready.
No, I read the other one. The other one was fine.
I don't want to.
You want me to read?
I don't want to.
Eat the peas, Daddy. Don't suck at picks next time.
All right, here we go. Ready?
Oh God,
3,
it's gonna be so hard to swallow.
2,
Oh, it's too thick.
1. Here we go.
Oh God,
You know,
don't even.
Oh, do another bite then if it's not that bad.
Do another one.
it's not good.
Yeah,
It's
take
really
another
not
bite.
good.
You seem to enjoy that.
Oh God, no. Hey,
Never mind. Never mind.
oh God. You want to tell people what the peas tasted like?
Okay, so at first, I can still taste it. Oh, it's coming up.
No, don't, dude. If you vomit, I'm out. I'm done for the show.
Oh boy. Oh, that one. At first, really not as bad. It's not on the front.
Oh God. Okay.
Front of the tongue. It's not that bad. It's the back. It gets into your mouth. And then all you can feel.
Hey, you need to be careful because if you do vomit, that bib goes down with you, and it's gonna sit. Oh God! Oh God!
It's in the back of your mouth.
Oh God! All right.
Hey, what if Yamamoto's gonna get less?
Oh God! We'll find out next on 101 ESPN.
I get it. You've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it. We've all been thinking about it, but you couldn't think of a worse time to sell your home. Sure, it's worth a small fortune right now, but are you really going to swap that 2 or 3% interest rate and pay 7 or 8% to a new house? Nope, no way. You don't have to. With the Get Paid and Stay program from Truehold. This is ingenious in my opinion. With their Get Paid and Stay program, Truehold will buy your home now at its best current value, and you get to bank all the cash now and continue living in your home while those interest rates are as high as they are. You could wait for them to come back down, or you can just stay there for as long as you'd like. It's your call. Plus, you won't have to pay property taxes, insurance, or any of the upkeep any longer. Truehold will take care of all of those expenses. To learn more about Truehold's Get Paid and Stay program, call them today at 1-855-300-9993 or visit them at Truehold.com for the smarter and faster way to cash out on your home's full value without having to move. That's Truehold.com. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. I'm good. I'm good.
I'm not. Man, watching you dry heave is making me sick.
Yeah, I'm not loving it. I'm not going to lie to you. But what would make me feel better is if the Cardinals added a Yamamoto to their rotation going into next year. And Alex, I was reading over at Viva El Birdos yesterday. I get a bunch of my Cardinals news over there. They had the Birdos in brief, projecting a Yamamoto contract and his posting fee. Now, when I went over there, I kind of assumed, all right, well, we have a pretty good idea of what this is going to be, right? It's going to be $30 million plus a year, and it just depends on how many years he's going to end up getting. You looked at what we saw earlier today as we were talking about Jim Bowden's projections. It was $30 million a year, 7 years, $210 million. And then I went over to Viva El Birdos, and they had what I think is a pretty compelling argument as to why he's going to get less than what any of us are currently projecting for. Now, it's hard to know for sure what it's going to be because there's a lot of risk by bringing over pitchers. T-Bone, you've mentioned this a number of times where you wonder, like, hey, how's it going to translate? You just don't know. You don't know until you find out. And giving out a 7+ year contract to somebody that you have no idea if they're going to be good when they get over or how long it's going to take them for them to adjust to the current major league standard. It's hard. It's hard to do. And so for a lot of teams, there's going to be a threshold of risk that they're unwilling to meet. So over at Viva El Birdos, they say they think a projected contract for him is actually closer to a 6-year, $120 million deal, where he's getting $20 million a year, and it's going to take him through his age 31 season. Now, Alex, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But if it did, between the contract and the posting fee, the Cardinals would actually be in a pretty good spot. You'd be paying about $10 million in posting fees. So for this upcoming year, it would cost you about $25 million is what you'd be looking at. If that ends up being correct, $20 million a year, a $10 million posting fee, or $20 million posting fee, excuse me, how would you feel about that for Yamamoto?
I mean, I would even be more willing to super swipe with that one. I don't see that happening because I think somebody's going to overpay to get Yamamoto, like go to the $30 million a year route. But if it falls to that number where you're paying that posting fee and that's what that kind of salary hit is for the first year, and then you're locking him up for a 6-year deal, I mean, that's a steal for you because you got a guy who could potentially be an ace who's 25 years old. You'll have him up until he's 31 years old, and you're not paying him ace money. That's a win for the Cardinals. The problem there also is now you get into the conversation of, Yamamoto really gets to choose, which I know he does now. But if it's $20 million a year and it's 6 years, Yamamoto really gets to decide where he wants to play, and that's going to be tougher for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I would. I mean, either way, whatever the contract is, the Cardinals should be in those conversations because he is the top pitcher on the market for his age and his stuff, and it just comes down to what it translates to. But to your point of if he's making $20 million a year, I mean, you're talking about a guy that is making that's money that's like a number 2, number 3. I mean, we just did Tinder Tuesday, and like guys making around $20 million on Jim Bowden's projections. were Sonny Gray, Eduardo Rodriguez. That's probably the downside for Yamamoto, is he ends up not, and his stuff doesn't translate all the way over, but he's still got good stuff, and he ends up being like a number 2 or a number 3. That's the downside, in my opinion. And if you're paying $20 million for the downside of that, plus the upside is potentially a guy that is better than Kodai Senga and can lead the front end of a rotation into the playoffs and down the stretch for 6 years, absolutely sign me up for that kind of a deal for Yamamoto.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. I think this would make all the sense in the world. Now, if you're wondering, okay, why is it such a risk? Why are there so many questions associated with this guy? If we all agree he's probably the projected number 1 starter on the market. Well, one, just different leagues. Different leagues, different bats, different adjustments that he's going to have to make that he's never had to make previously. Number 2, he's 5'10". He's 5'10", 175 pounds. That is a much smaller pitcher than what you would typically see in terms of the frame of a number 1 starter. Like, this is slighter in terms of his frame than Sonny Gray, and people question whether or not Sonny Gray can hold up over the long haul. So that's going to be something that he has to overcome in terms of just the traditional scouts that are out looking and saying, yeah, that guy's going to be your number 1 starter? 5'10", $175? I don't know about that in the year 2023. The other thing is his strikeout rate, while good, is not elite necessarily. It's basically a batter per inning. Is that going to translate to being a 10 strikeouts per 9 innings over here in the States? I don't know. You would think probably, because the strikeout numbers in general are lower over in Japan because guys don't strike out as often. But it's hard to say for sure. So with all of these things in the backdrop, it does make you wonder, okay, what is it going to look like when he gets to the States? I think it's going to be really good. And if it ended up being where a lot of teams said, you know what, we're willing to go to $20 million a year, but no more, I think the Cardinals should go to 20 to 25. And they should be willing to take on the risk that is associated with him. The other thing that you don't have to do if you go get Yamamoto instead of one of the top free agents, it's not associated with a draft pick.
Yeah.
So you get to keep that 2nd or 3rd round pick, depending on what you do elsewhere. And that's not associated with signing Yamamoto. So I think we're all in favor. If it's lower than anticipated, that should be your number 1 guy. I am still skeptical, though, because there are so many teams that are so desperate for pitching that if they miss out on Nola, Snell, who else is at the top of the market? Montgomery, Gray. If you miss out on those 4, man, there is not a lot out there unless you go to the trade market. Yamamoto's probably going to be the other top guy.
Well, and he's 25 years old. How many times do you get a 25-year-old pitcher who you get in the
100%.
prime of his career? You're going to pounce on this if you're the Dodgers, the Mets, and look, if it's sitting at 6 years and $20 million a year, you're going to overbid that because you want teams to stay away from it.
He's got the best stuff coming over from Japan since Shohei. So people are going to outprice themselves to go get him. The Mets may be the team that does it. Cohen may just say, you know what, we're not doing a ton this offseason. Let's go all in. Give them
the Giants,
30,
the Dodgers. Like, there's a
Yeah.
bunch of teams that really need pitching that are big-time markets. Hell, if the Phillies end up losing Aaron Nola, they should absolutely go into this market, dip into it, and say, okay, we're going to replace him with the money that we would have used for Nola by going and getting a 25-year-old potential ace to pair with Zach Wheeler. So there's a lot of teams that could end up going this route, and that's why I do think it'll eventually end up getting to a higher market than what you would previously expect. You guys want to play a game of Arbitration Station before we talk to Jeremy Rutherford on the other side?
Is this like Conjunction Junction?
Basically the exact same.
Your function?
So let's go through a few of these. We can do it relatively quickly. Would you tender this player if it meant paying him X amount of dollars next year? That is essentially what this means. They get all of these figures from MLB Trade Rumors. They're typically pretty damn accurate on what guys are expected to get via the arbitration process. So that's where I'm getting these numbers for. They put these out recently. Tyler O'Neill is projected to make $5.5 million next year if you bring him back via the arbitration tender. Are you non-tendering him and losing him for nothing, or bringing him back for $5.5 million and either trading him or keeping him on the roster?
Yep, I'm losing him for nothing, and I'm fully prepared for the ramifications of him getting picked up elsewhere and turning into an all-star. And we're talking about him in the postseason, but I don't care. It's long overdue, $5.5 million. It's time to move on.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would move on. He's a losing baseball player, so I would get rid of him.
Non-tender as well. I would take that $5.5 million and put it straight towards a reliever. I would just rather have the reliever, and then instead of having to find the guy that I want via trade for O'Neill, I'm just going to sign him. I'm going to go to the free agent market and say, what can I get for $5.5 million? And then go get that guy and say, that was my trade. My trade was the money. That was more valuable than the asset that Tyler O'Neill is at this point. Tommy Edman, $6.5 million.
Tender.
Yeah, tender. Absolutely.
Totally agree. Ryan Helsley, $3 million.
Tender.
Andrew Kisner, $2 million.
Tender.
Dylan Carlson, $1.8 million.
Tender.
Yeah, tender.
Jake Woodford, $1.1 million.
Non-tender.
Non-tender. He's a guy that he's like a long reliever, and I don't need that guy for $1 million. I can put that $1 million to better use.
Totally agree. Jojo Romero, $900,000.
Tender.
Last one. And I find this to be the most interesting decision for the Cardinals this offseason via their arbitration process. Dakota Hudson at $3.7 million.
Man, if that was less, I would say tender, but I can't give him that much that much money. I mean, I could sign another bullpen arm for that amount of money and get better contributions than that. So no.
I think they will non-tender him, but I think I would tender him. I think I would tender him because you saw down the stretch that though he's not a great pitcher, he's a solid, capable number 5. And if you need him in case of emergency, especially if you're going to go out and get guys like Seth Lugo, James Paxton, Tyler Glass, now if you trade for him to put atop the rotation, you're going to need somebody that can fill in 10, 15 starts. Hudson could do that, and if he has to sit in the minors for $3.7 million, I think it might be worth it.
I would rather have Thompson, Liberatore, and some of those other guys that are coming up that
I think he's better than Liberatore.
Right now he is. I think those guys all have more upside than Dakota Hudson. And let's be honest, guys, if Dakota Hudson's starting for you, you're not expecting much. You're hoping for 5 innings, 3 earned runs. That's the hope is what you're getting from him. I would non-tender him. $3.7 million. I can add that to the $5.5 that I'm getting from Tyler O'Neill. It's $9 million. You add in what Jake Woodford's making, and he's not going to get that from you. It's $10 million. Man, I'm going to go get myself a really nice reliever with that money.
What if they say we're converting Liberatore into a bullpen arm?
Fine. I've got other pitchers that are down in the minors, and I'm expecting to add 3 starters via free agency or trade this offseason. I'm good. I'll have Zach Thompson in the role that Dakota Hudson was in this year for me. And I believe Zach Thompson will be significantly better in that role than Dakota Hudson has been for you. That $3.7 million, I just think you can use in a better way than by giving it to the number 6 starter that's spending most of the season down in AAA for you. So I would not tender him. I think that is going to be one of the telling signs going into this offseason, though, of what their plans are with that money. He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Jeremy Rutherford joins us next.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about My Dentist, 100 West Dental, just off of Manchester, a new office with the most modern technology, and the most important part of all of it with Dentist, it's the patient experience. They're all about preventative care, preventative procedure, making sure they're taking care of you and your overall health, your mouth, your overall body, taking care of that in the long run. And look, if you're a guy like me, you're a little skeptical of going to the dentist. You don't like it very much, but look, overall mouth health is so important, and making sure you have a dentist that cares about that is even more important. The best thing that they taught me the times that I've gone there is, look, if it's like something that's plaque buildup, if it's a bleeding gums, sure, it doesn't seem like it's something important now, but all of that in your mouth is going through your body, so you want to make sure you're taking care of it all. So go check them out. Super simple. You just go to their website, 100westdental.com. You can book online. You can actually do a virtual consultation with the doctor, and they got a special offer right now. If you mention my name, Alex Ferrario, at 100 West Dental, you get $1,000 off of the Invisalign package. So check them out. 636-585-0100, 100westdental.com.
It's always a great surprise when Jeremy Rutherford joins us in studio. He's the Blues insider for The Athletic and 101 ESPN. You can find his work over at The Athletic. Follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. He joins us now, not via the 101 ESPN hotline, instead right here in studio. Jared, what's up, man?
Well, this was, I had to drive quite a bit of ways out of my way to get here. I figured this is the only way my son could see me, because that's all he does is watch YouTube. So,
well, look at that beautiful mug on YouTube right now. He's probably thinking, my dad's good looking.
JR, I got to start with this question. What's the number one power play for the Blues right now?
The number
Based
one?
on what you saw earlier today, who is on the number one power
Remember
play?
what we've talked about prior, where you want to side with me rather than BK.
He doesn't even have any background on this.
A lot of times I start siding with somebody not knowing who I'm siding with, and then I just hear you guys cheer.
That's right.
I'm like, oh, okay,
You'll
I guess
get
I
that in about
sided
10 seconds.
with that guy. No, we talked to Craig Berube about the power play afterwards, and he said he was going for balance here. So I don't think we're looking at a number one power play. But what he did say, guys, is that, some of the guys that he's moved around, he's done so because he thinks that maybe they're more adept at, let's say, getting shots off from the wall. And that's what I saw a lot of in today's practice. And at first I thought, okay, maybe that's coincidence. I watched a couple, plays where they were really letting it rip. But then when I asked Berube about it, he said, no, we need more shots. We're going for more shots. I think that's at the point where they have to be.
Yeah. I'm looking at...
But who do you think will be on the ice first?
Shut up, man.
Unit, right?
Shut up. He just said who it's going to be.
Let me see. Okay, so without knowing, because I didn't get a chance to listen on the way in, let me look at these units. Thomas, Buchnevich, Falk, Vrana, Kapanen, Krug, Kyrou, Shen, Hayes, Saad is the other one. I am going to go with...
Make the right decision.
the Thomas power play.
Let's go! Let's go!
I'll be shocked. It's not going to happen. That's not happening. No
He
chance.
just knows exactly where the number one unit is. The number one center would be the number one power play unit.
Or the number one quarterback on the power play would be the
Justin
number one
Falk
unit.
on the number one power play unit with Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich.
Hey, and typically you do say that, right? That the point guy, the quarterback is going to be that number one power play unit. However, the power play is 1 for 21.
So there's really not a number one power play
Touché,
unit.
sir.
Jared, so I'm looking at these lines, and look, they're breaking them up. Kyrou's playing with Shen and Saad now, and Kapanen gets an opportunity with the top. I understand Jakub Vrana was a healthy scratch, but at some point, do you see the need to put a Jakub Vrana in your top six just to get more offense, or do you think this is as balanced as you can ask with those lines?
Yeah, I think what Craig Berube is doing here is obviously going for that balance. He's going for a change. You're splitting up Thomas and Kyrou. You're putting Kapanen on that top line, which I'm kind of intrigued. How does it look? I'm not saying he's a top line player, but I think that he can skate. He provides stability at both ends. So I think that he can handle that assignment. In terms of Vrana, I think if he were doing the other things that the coaching staff were looking for, i.e. his healthy scratch led to that, I think he'd already maybe have that chance. I think it's those deficiencies and whatever headbutting went on behind the scenes in terms of him being a healthy scratch is why he's not in that spot. Because, he hasn't played top 6 minutes necessarily with the Blues, but I think he's got that potential. The one thing is the ice time. I mean, he's 12, 13 minutes. Like, who would ever... We're talking about this guy being a potential 30-goal scorer at the beginning of the year. 30-goal scorers don't play 12 or 13 minutes.
Right. And that's something where I do understand to a degree where Craig Berube's coming from. Like, the turnover that he had, you put out the video, I believe, over on Twitter, it can't happen. Like, that's just one of those things that cannot happen in that spot. This entire team is making turnovers that can't happen. You've got a lot of guys that are going out there and aren't producing for you offensively. I loved your piece that you had with Vrana the other day where you asked him, what's going on here? And he kind of turned the question on you and said, hey, what kind of a player do you think that I am? And he said, well, you're a goal scorer that skates well. And he said, that's exactly what I am. I kind of understand both perspectives, and I get why there would be some headbutting maybe potentially involved in this. And I don't know if that's something that can be fixed. If Vrana at this point in time is the player that he's been, he's a fully formed guy. This isn't some 21-year-old that's just getting his first crack into the NHL, and he thinks his best way to get that next contract is by scoring 25 or 30 goals. It's kind of hard to convince that guy, well, I need you to start working on this other stuff. You're back checking,
right.
You're forechecking. I don't know really how you get that point across if the player isn't necessarily receptive to it.
Right, BK. And it's one thing if he's a 25, 26-year-old guy who's been with the Blues organization his entire life,
Sure.
and you're just trying to convince this guy, hey, this is the way we need to play. But you're talking about a guy who's on a third organization. I realized that he had some success in Washington. They won a cup. He was a good player there. And it was just a cup of coffee in Detroit. But now you're talking third team where with all three franchises, because you're talking about, is there a willingness to play that all-around game? And, he says, what kind of player am I? I said offensive-minded player. But you look at other players on the team, Kyrou's an offensive-minded player, but you still got to get that out of him, right? That's what Craig Berube's been trying to do for a couple years, and now we're starting to see that. So especially with what the Blues are trying to do right now and play a team-oriented system, they have to have everybody on board. If you let anybody off the hook, it's just not going to work. And I believe what Craig Berube says, he's got to be harder on guys. He's got to make tougher decisions. If it pisses people off, so be it. He's got to make these types of decisions. And he did that finally with Verona.
So I'm going to preface this question, JR, because I'm the guy that always sits there and says, like, it's not the coach, it's not the coach. But if this continues where you just see the inconsistent play, and I know a lot of fans probably are already questioning it, when do you start questioning the coach?
Well, it's a fair question, and it's a question that you have to entertain at these points of, what's going on with the franchise right now. To me, Craig Berube has had a lot of success with this organization, but the Stanley Cup honeymoon has worn off a long time ago. Now everybody has to evolve. Everybody has to adapt. Last year, okay, you look at the year and you say, that was awful. You identify that he's not the problem. At least Doug Armstrong did. Obviously, ownership did. And then you bring back a roster that you think can be competitive while you're retooling, right? But now you're in a situation where you're putting pressure on Craig Berube to win with a roster that is probably not a contender and may not be a playoff team, and asking him to get results. Obviously, if his message is heard and this team plays hard every night, then he's going to keep his job through this retool. If it becomes a situation where you just see this type of inconsistency and you see, look at the power play, look at the lack of scoring, look at all these areas that just aren't operating where they should be, then I think there's going to be some question about Craig Berube and his job. Now, when he had 3 years left on his deal, do you sit here and consider it? Probably not. Now you got he's got this year and he's got next year.
Right.
It becomes part of the conversation. But if it's me, there every day, objective viewpoint, I think he's still a guy who can get the job, and you have to say considering with the pieces that he has right now. But at some point, if this continues, that's the bridge we're going to have to cross.
Our guest is Jeremy Rutherford. You can find his work over at The Athletic. I referenced it a little bit ago. He had a great piece with Jakub Vrana on why he was benched, what led to that decision, the healthy scratch for a couple of games, and what he needs to do to get himself back into the good graces of the coaching staff. He's back into the lineup. JR, I did want to ask you mentioned if they aren't playing hard, do you think that what we've seen in their losses this year is a lack of effort? Is it a lack of execution? Like what has led to this in your mind? Because I got to be honest, I don't necessarily watch the games and say to myself, man, they're not trying hard. I sometimes see a lack of skill and a lack of talent on the ice.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I said a second ago. Is the talent there? Is it a contending team? Are we evaluating this roster, this lineup on a nightly basis as a contender, or are we evaluating it as a retool? And I'm not saying let anybody off the hook. I'm just saying that you have to be honest about what the goal is here and what the team looks like. So in terms of effort, I think it's been there for the most part. I think you can look at a couple of the games and question it, and I did ask Craig Berube about the effort after a couple of those games, and he goes, I just don't see that that's the issue right there. What I think is you get into a situation where the Blues get chasing, and they're backed into their zone. We know they've spent so much time in their defensive zone this year, and I think you get to the point where you fall behind, and now you're kind of chasing things, and you're in your zone for 45 seconds, and you're like, what are we doing here? Like, I'm trying to go make this play, but I don't necessarily think that's going to put us in. I'm giving everything I have to make this team better, but then the results aren't there, and then you kind of start to question everything. And I think that's what we've seen from this Blues team in the past year or two. When things don't go well, it kind of looks like the effort's not there, but I think it's a combination that deals a lot with what you talk about is not as much skill as the teams they're playing.
So if that's the case, then do you feel like they have the right nucleus in place to take them out of this retool, or is that still remain to be seen for Doug Armstrong?
So to be honest, I think they do have some players who can help the situation, but I think you're caught in the middle of some contracts, and you're kind of forced to put guys in certain roles and count on certain guys to get you through this retool. Like if Doug Armstrong could just sit back and take a scratch pad and say, ideally, I would like this, this, and this in terms of trying to get this thing turned around, I would love to do that, but he can't do that. Like, he's handcuffed himself with some of the contracts. There's been some poor performance by a number of these players. He tried to make the trade with Krug that didn't go through. So I think it's more of a situation where these are the cards that he's dealt himself, and these are the cards that they have. So this is what they have to roll with. I just don't think there's much wiggle room, even if he wanted to change the situation.
Final question for you. We can get you out of here on this. At what point do you feel like you have a good idea of what this team is? How many games into the season do we need to get?
Yeah,
we're not there yet through 7, but at what point are we?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask, because I was cursors blinking on the laptop the other day. I always say that, and you're thinking, okay, how do I describe this situation? It was before and after the Vancouver game, and I thought, what's the number of games? Is it 15? Is it 20? Is it 20? Oh, I just watched that game. It's 7. Like, I know what this team is. It's 7 games. Like, that's who this team is.
Last year, it felt like it was 10.
Yeah,
after 10, we had a
really
pretty good
did,
idea, because
yeah.
that was when Army came out and he was like, hey, this is unacceptable. What is happening right now has to change. And if he's going to come out at that point, it feels like he had a pretty good idea at that point of what this team was.
BK, the magic number with a lot of coaches is 20. You talk to Ken Hitchcock, all the GMs, it's usually 20 games. But I think that people have to be realistic that you can see it after 8, 10, 12 games. You can. And Doug Armstrong came out, talked to the media last year, like you said, after 8 or 10 games, and nothing got better. Let me look at some stats here real quick. I'll be quick with this.
Look at this guy going BK route on us.
I'm waiting.
He's got his glasses and everything.
Numbers nerd here. Goals per game, 1.86. That's 31st in the league. Power play, 4.8%. That's 32nd last in the league. 5-on-5 goals for 9. That's 31st in the league. 5-on-5 goals against 12. That's 22nd in the league. From my experience covering teams, when you see numbers like that, they don't get dramatically better. Maybe they're 29, 30, 31, 32 in some of these categories, and by the end of the year, we're going to be talking about them being 23, 24, 25. These numbers that I just read to you guys, they don't get in the top 10 by the end of the year. This is kind of who you are. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions where teams have turned it around and got hot, things like that. We saw the 2019 team, but I don't think that this is that year. I don't think this is that roster. So unless these numbers start to get better soon, I think by the 20-game mark, the 30-game mark, we're going to be way past where we know this team to be.
Let me throw one more in here, JR, because Eric Francis put this out on Sportsnet a little bit ago about the Calgary Flames.
Noah Hannafin, here we come.
Yeah, well, welcome to Noah Hannafin, but maybe not just him. There's Elias Lindholm you could talk about.
Okay.
At what point, if you're Doug Armstrong, if another team is struggling, that you look at it and you say, okay, maybe our core's not right, their core's not right, do you pursue a trade like that, or do you just stick with what you've stated that, hey, this is a 3-year retool and we're going to let these guys figure it out as we go?
Yeah, so when you're a reporter, you have to constantly, when you're scrolling through Twitter, look at every situation, every headline that you see and say, okay, could this affect the Blues? Could this affect the Blues? How do I approach this? How do I investigate this to see if this could be? I got to admit, though, when Justin Falk was available, I didn't think he was coming to St. Louis. Nobody thought that. But I think when I stopped and I saw that Calgary headline about they're going to put a hold on contract talks and could blow this thing up, there are a couple players on that team who I think could help a team in the position that the Blues are. And I think if we continue to see what we're seeing, there's going to have to be some change. I don't think you can continue to roll the rest of this season. Obviously, you're not going to go without making changes in the offseason.
Right.
But I think that you have to take advantage of some certain situations. There was a situation in Philadelphia, Braden Shen's available. You make that trade. Look how there are types of moves like that Doug Armstrong can make in season, even with where the team is, to not only help it now, but help it in the future. And I think Calgary is a good example of that.
He's Jeremy Rutherford. You can find his work over on The Athletic. You can hear him regularly on 101 ESPN as well, and follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. JR, thanks for stopping by, man.
Happy
Appreciate
Halloween,
the time.
boys. Have fun with those kiddos tonight.
JR
Same
dressed
to
up
you.
today for us.
He did.
Looks like Michael Scott.
Come on.
My reporter outfit.
Yeah, his reporter outfit. Big
Are you
writer.
guys going trick-or-treating outside?
Typically, you'll sit out in the driveway, right, with the fire and,
we're
and the
skipping it this
cooler.
year.
There's no way. I'm
chance.
inside. Not a
You
chance.
guys are soft. I'm going to stay out there till midnight tonight.
No, you're not. Liar. You are such a liar.
I had this
There's no
discussion.
chance you're interacting with other humans.
Yeah.
Well, I am. I'm interacting with my sister, my brother-in-law, my mom,
not
my dad.
strangers.
No, not strangers. Are you kidding me?
Speaking of young kids, what's up with the baby food? Is it coming up next?
Oh, it's been coming up into this trash can over here.
The next one up is
Oh, yeah. Listen to this,
sweet
JR.
potato and turkey.
Yummy.
He's soft. I told him to get the puree beef, and he's like, nah, that's going to be too gross.
Looks chunky.
You hear that? Here, listen.
Oh, God.
Let me play you the sound that I just found when I was cutting up some audio over here of BK reacting to eating baby food.
Oh, God. That's a sound I never want to hear again in my
That's
life.
JR.
Thanks,
That's
boys.
Jeremy Rutherford. Appreciate him as always. You can always hear him on BK and Ferrario each and every Tuesday. Coming up, Better to Forget It here on 101 ESPN.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Soliga Heating and Cooling. Blues will be back in action tomorrow as they visit the Colorado Avalanche, and we'll have pregame coverage starting at 7:30 with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. And then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 8:30. Tonight here on 101 ESPN, it's Game 4 of the World Series as the Rangers lead 2-1. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6. And breaking news in the NFL, according to Ian Rappaport, the San Francisco 49ers are trading for Commanders defensive end Chase Young. It was likely to be a mid-round pick in 2024. This Sports Center update was brought to you by Soliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. The Washington deal of Chase Young to San Francisco is official now, according to Adam Schefter. A third-round pick going back to Washington in this deal. My assumption is San Francisco is not planning to bring back Chase Young. This is probably just, hey, we're a Super Bowl contender. We need an edge rusher. The best one available right now is Chase Young. He's on an expiring deal. Let's go get him. Let's add him to this mix, and let's see if we can make a run for a Super Bowl. I respect the hell out of it. This is not something that comes along very often, man, and you never know how long your window is going to be. So while you're in it, go for it. This is what the Rams decided to do. Now, they went all in. This is not an all-in move. This is not a trade for a guy and then give him $20 million a year. It's trade for a guy, let him walk via free agency. You'll get a comp pick for him when he signs elsewhere for big-time money, and you see what he was able to give you. I like it a lot, man. I think this is a really smart deal by San Francisco. My better to forget it. The San Francisco 49ers with this trade just locked up the NFC West.
Man, as much as I want to bet this one, you still have to worry about Brock Purdy and what he's looked like in these last couple of games. And, I mean, Seattle's not a joke, and we are forgetting what Seattle pulled off yesterday with their trade. I mean, you added another really good defensive player for that team, and I would take Geno Smith over Brock Purdy the way that he's playing right now. So I might forget this one. I think San Francisco just tightened up the best part of their team, but you still got to worry about your quarterback.
Yeah, I'm going to forget it, too, because I don't think it's a lock yet. I think it's going to come down to the wire. It's an arms race in the NFC West right now because Purdy's not playing like a difference maker. And I said that after, not the last game, but the Monday night game that they lost to the Vikings, where I said, he's not a guy that you fear. He just has to dump it off to his playmakers, and you hope his playmakers make a move. But without Trent Williams and with Debo dealing with an injury, the offense just hasn't looked the same. And I don't think Brock Purdy's played as well, even though I think he's been relying on those weapons. So I'm going to forget it. I think they're probably the favorites, but I'm not saying it's a lock.
I'm going to bet it. I think they're just better than Seattle is right now. And I do have some of the same concerns that you guys do with Brock Purdy. I think it's reasonable to question if he could be a guy that's consistent enough for them to get all the way. But that defense should be a lot better with Chase Young now. I think that's a real difference maker, and I don't think that's a crazy thing to say at all. And I think that offense, whenever they get Debo back healthy, when you get Christian McCaffrey closer to 100%, he's still playing through some nagging injuries, you would make an assumption. And whenever they get their all-star level left tackle back, this team's going to be right back to where it once was. So I'm going to bet it. I think that the the San Francisco 49ers just locked up the West. Alex?
All right, guys, bet it or forget it. The Blues and Calgary Flames make a trade before next season.
I'll go ahead and bet it just because I'm optimistic today, feeling pretty good prior to eating this last thing of baby food.
The peas made you feel good about yourself. And for those that missed it, Eric Francis of Sportsnet, who's going to join us tomorrow at 12:15, said that Calgary right now reportedly has halted all contract extension talks, where last week Elliot Friedman reported that they were nearing a deal between the Flames and Noah Hannafin, and Eric Francis says in his piece that if Calgary decides to go this route, they would blow it up and start looking for younger players. So I'm betting this one, even if it's only one of their pending UFAs. This is an opportunity of a team that's kind of in the middle and another team that's in the middle to try and make a deal that makes sense for both sides.
I think I'm going to forget it. I don't know if the Blues make the move. I think the Blues just stick with what they've got, and they see how things end up going, and they just kind of ride that wave, and then they'll address it in the offseason. Maybe in the offseason they can't have those conversations with the Flames because those guys are already walked in free agency, but then they start to explore these different kind of franchise-altering routes. I don't know if they do it in season.
T-Bone, what do you got?
Bet it or forget it. We will see a top-end wide receiver get moved at this year's deadline. No reports yet.
I'm going to forget this one.
I think it's going to be a dud of a deadline outside of what happened in Washington.
Yeah. And, I mean, look, only one team has been selling. I mean, Minnesota's sold off a couple of pieces. They sold the offensive guard, but then they add Joshua Dobbs. Like, they're really confusing right now.
Weird deal.
But you're only seeing one team. And I don't know. I mean, Denver has basically said they're not trading anything. Vegas isn't trading Devontae Adams. Who else is trading right now? That's worth anything, I should say. So I'm forgetting him.
I would call Washington if I'm a team that's looking for a wide receiver and say, hey, what's up with Curtis Samuel? He's on an expiring deal this year. Curtis Samuel's a really solid player. Now, the problem is the team that most needs a wide receiver is the Chiefs, and he doesn't really fit what they need. He's more of a gadget type of a weapon, and they've already got a couple of those guys with McCole Hardman and Kadarius Toney. But if you're Buffalo, I think he makes a lot of sense for you. So a team like that is a contender that needs a gadget type of player that can maybe help you out both in the running game and the passing game. I think he's somebody that I would call on. Otherwise, I just don't see a ton of players that are available that make sense as trade guys. So I'm going to say forget it. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot going on.
See, I'm going to bet it. I think one of Judy or Sutton gets dealt.
I hope you're right.
Because I just can't see how Denver holds on to those guys. It makes no sense.
Big divisional win a couple days ago.
Good for them. What I saw was the asking price go up. So I would say that one of those guys is getting dealt. It just makes too much sense, and I'm not buying what Sean Payton's selling.
I never, ever believe what Sean Payton is trying to sell you. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. We'll get a couple of these. Guys, Bet It or Forget It. The Cardinals end up trading for Tyler Glasnow this offseason.
Forget it. I think the Tampa Bay Rays are just going to ask more than what the Cardinals are willing to give up, where they can feel like they could get a free agent. Now, if they fall flat with all of these free agents, then I'll say bet it because they're going to get desperate. But as it stands now, forget it.
So I would forget it unless Nola or Gray go elsewhere. Or if one of them accepts the qualifying offer. I don't think that would happen, but if that was another one of those scenarios, I think he would become their number one target after those two. It's clear Nola and Gray are target 1A and 1B. I think Glasnow's target number 2. He makes too much sense for the Cardinals.
I'm going to bring up another piece from Viva Alberto's. They put out a piece earlier today. Tyler Glasnow and Jason Adam for Alec Burleson.
Who's Jason Adam?
Reliever. Very, very good reliever.
How much does he got? He must not have a ton of control.
So why the hell
left.
would Tampa do it?
I think it is the final year of his contract, yeah.
So why would Tampa do it?
Eligible this year. He's got 3 years left of control.
Sweet Jesus, this guy's good.
Yeah. He's 33.
You would probably need more than Burleson involved, but I'm in.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's probably like Burleson and Donovan, but
surely they can't.
No, you're not going to have to give up that much.
Surely they can't rob us more. Tyler Glasnow has
1 year of control at $25 million, and he's got a massive injury history. Tyler Glasnow is not going to cost as much as a lot of people are anticipating.
Not Glasnow, but if you throw in a reliever with 3 years of control, that's that good.
Glasnow for Burleson, I could absolutely buy into.
So let's start with there. Glasnow for Burleson.
Yeah, I do it. We just talked about Burleson for Shane Bieber. This is better than Shane Bieber.
Would you rather have Shane Bieber or Tyler Glasnow?
I'd rather have Glasnow.
I think upside's better.
The upside's better and the stuff is better. And if he pitches well, I'd be even open to the idea of giving Glasnow an extension once you brought him here.
Somebody said, guys, I think the asking price for Glasnow is going to be the same or more as the asking price for Logan Gilbert, and I think Gilbert's a better player. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, Logan Gilbert.
The asking price for Logan Gilbert is massive because he is young, cheap, cost controlled.
And doesn't have injuries.
The deal that I always reference when it comes to why is that guy only worth this if this guy is worth that, is Adam Eaton. Adam Eaton had a long-term extension in place when he was dealt by the Chicago White Sox going to Washington, I believe it was. That was in the Lucas Giolito deal when Giolito was one of the top-rated prospects in all of Major League Baseball. It was a massive haul that they got in return. The reason why was very simple. It's a cost-controlled player who has multiple years left remaining on a more than reasonable rate. Those guys always cost more. If you've got 1 year that you're trading from, it's kind of like what we see at the deadline every year, except even less so because there's also free agents that are available. The value is just not there. It's just not there for those guys, unfortunately. But fortunately for the Cardinals, they can take advantage of it.
You get a top 30 prospect, but in that 20 to 30 range from teams. Yeah. I mean, that's what the Cardinals got in most of those 1 year rental deals.
Think about the Mookie Betts deal. What they got in return for him. They got Alex Verdugo as the headliner, and he's a fine player. they're probably going to have to trade him this offseason. So there's just not a lot of value in guys that are on one-year deals. So if you think that you want one of Glasnow or Bieber, you're probably going to be able to get them for a more than reasonable return. I think Alec Burleson is that's a stand-in piece. Like, it might end up being more like somebody else that's in your minor league system, as a JC, somebody like that. But Alec Burleson, if you're looking for major league pieces, that's probably about what it would take for one of those guys. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, we're going to have the BK and Ferrario Rewind, and I will finish serving my punishment. One more sweet potato and turkey puree.
Oh, God.
Last one.
Stop it with that. Oh, I'm done. I'm
Last one
out.
coming
I'm
up
out.
next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and I've got exciting news for all the men in the listening audience right now. Victory Men's Health has launched a new telehealth site. It's called Victory RX. Man, you can go there today. VictoryRx.com. That's VictoryRx.com. Go there, get prescribed the ED medication that you've been waiting for. They have made this process super easy. You go to the site, you do your entire consults all via text. No longer do you have to put in the same information 17 different ways, and then maybe you jump through 17. No, not with VictoryRx.com. They've treated thousands of men at Victory Men's Health in their standalone locations, and now they are giving men from all over easier access to their #1 selling ED medication. If you're curious about it, it's a chewable tablet. It's going to have active ingredients with both Viagra and Cialis, and because it is a chewable tablet, it's going to be a faster uptake. It's going directly into your bloodstream. You don't have to worry about any of the food or the drink that you had earlier in the day. That will not be affected with the chewable tablet. Go to VictoryRx.com. That's VictoryRx.com. Play hard. 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line. And right now is your chance to win a pair of tickets to see Blink 182 on August 10th. Alek's going to be there, and you can too. All you got to do,
hell yeah,
text in the correct answer to this question. The first baby food that I ate today was blank. What was the first baby food that I had to eat as part of my pick'em punishment for the last month being horrible at picking football games? If you have the correct answer at 314-399-9646 and your texter number 101, you are getting a free pair of tickets to see Blink 182.
Oh, God. Stop, man. I can't.
That's what it sounded like after I was finished with that baby food. Been a rough day, been a rough show for me, but I think the show in general was entertaining, I would say.
I've had fun.
Describe entertaining, because it's
YouTube.com/101ESPNSTL. That's where you can go to rewatch the entire thing. You can always find it as well on the free 101 ESPN app or at 101ESPN.com. It's presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
That's where you go find the podcast.
Man, imagine the stills that we're going to be able to use for the screen footage of YouTube from today.
Yeah, I think T-Bone's going to be
a lot of this.
Heyday with that. Rangers versus the Diamondbacks this evening in a game that nobody's going to be interested in the starters. It's a bullpen game for Arizona and Andrew Heaney on the mound tonight for the Texas Rangers, basically.
Yeah.
Who you got in this one, Alex?
I'll say the Rangers because they are undefeated on the road this season.
They are.
I'm going Diamondbacks. I think they end that. I think they end the series at 2 apiece. And we'll see about Garcia.
I'm going Diamondbacks as well. I think they find a way to get themselves back into this series. I still think that the Rangers will win it, but I think that the Diamondbacks tonight are able to tie this thing up, knotted at 2 games apiece, going into game number 5.
All right, man. Let's finish this puppy.
I'm going 1 bite of this.
No, you're not.
2.
You're going 2. You already eked out of not having to do 12 spoonfuls.
Oh, my God. This is disgusting. It is.
Oh, yeah.
Goopy.
That looks like pudding.
Hey, let's get it on camera, please.
That looks like pudding.
It's really, really
He's gonna
gross.
be
This is sweet potato and turkey puree.
It sounds gross.
Dude, I'm
It
telling
does
you.
not smell good. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, God.
All right, here we go.
Hope you don't get chunks of turkey. That was a weak spoon. 1 more. Let that one soak in. Oh, yeah. Technically,
Not as bad as the other 2.
Technically, yeah, I'll give it a second. Let it try and get down your throat.
I don't like it.
Man, technically, you just
The sweet
had
potato, not bad.
You just had Thanksgiving
See,
dinner.
I knew he'd like that one. He likes sweet potatoes.
That's why you should have gone the
sweet
beef.
potato's not bad in there.
You should have went the beef.
The other 2 were horrendous. Absolutely atrocious in every
Well,
possible
then why'd you
way.
throw it away, man? Take it and eat it for lunch.
No, I'm good. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll talk to our Calgary Flames insider tomorrow about how the Blues can improve everything and make this all good again.
Amen.
We'll do that tomorrow. The Fast Lane's coming up next with Danny Mackin on 101 ESPN.
Why do you see so much hair when a werewolf drops his pants? Because it's a full moon.